Hello and welcome to today's video. Today is what I think a lot of people have been waiting for, and it's the tier list I made for season 12. Remember that this is my personal tier list, so of course everybody has their own biases and preferences, and that's going to be reflected in mine as well. I did seek out advice and ideas from other people whose opinions I trust. I made sure to read a lot of the discussion channels on the Discord to get as informed as I can on different classes and builds. But you know, I'm just one person, so even if something I did wasn't perfect, it is my best attempt to bring something that is useful to the community. So hopefully you can take it with that in mind. With all that said, let me pop it right on, and I'll be reading through it. So the link for this will be placed in the description if you do just want to hop into the link and just watch it. If you'd like, you can of course do that. If not, and you want to hear me yap and give a little bit more context to some things, then of course you're very invited to stay with me for this read along. All right, let me bring it up. Hopefully my voice makes it through the entire thing. It's been a very long week, so who knows? Okay. Why is it not working? Oh, I know why it's not working. Wait, one moment. There you go. Now it's working. You can see there are a few people already in because I gave this away on my stream yesterday. We did like the first reveal for it. Here I gave like a few disclaimers in advance. I'm gonna read through them. Hello people reading this right now. Hope everyone is excited for season 12 because I'm very excited personally. I think season 12 is gonna be very, very fun. So the disclaimers, let's go. Can we all first agree that tier lists are subjective and are heavily affected by the creator's bias and preferences? In gameplay, this should be plural, but whatever. In gameplay, in addition to skill and knowledge. Awesome. This is my tier list. Taking all these things into account, I do my best to cover what I can and rank builds with my own, hopefully well thought out criteria and values. This season I've decided to separate the classes. Last season I did one tier list that kind of brought classes together, but it didn't manage to showcase a lot of builds because of it, so I wanted to separate the classes so I could showcase a bit more. Last season people said that there were not many builds and they wanted more builds on the tier list, so that's why we made this change. I'll only rank builds I've tried to some extent, even if only in the beta, and hopefully we'll add video links to all of these builds ranked within season 12, so you can check them for yourself. So again, I will try my best to add as many links as possible to this tier list. I'm doing my best to kind of collect a lot of information, whether it's from me or from other people who I consider like you know, reliable sources of information. And I try to always test stuff myself to make sure that it checks out. So I'll do my best to have a lot of links here, and you'll kind of see with how it looks like what that's gonna look like. The tier list is made with softcore in mind. Sorry, hardcore people. I am at heart a softie. Even if I play hardcore sometimes, softcore is where my heart belongs. And mostly in mind, both in gear costs and safety. The safety ranking can meaning it's not always, it just can be used somewhat as an indicator to how HC viable I think the build is, but it is not tested for HC, meaning if there are situations or scenarios that the build can sometimes poof and your character will die, do not hold me responsible. This is not tested for HC. So again, it's up to you if you want to modify your gear to get yourself more survivability. That's perfectly fine, but it is not something that I personally did. Okay, just because something is not on this tier list does not mean not. It does not mean it's bad or irrelevant, but simply that I didn't have the time, interest in exploring it, or maybe I just didn't know about it. I'm just one person. I had so much time during the closed beta, and I did my best to cover as many builds due to suggestions and ideas that I had either seen on the Discord or things that people suggested in the chat, or things that I personally thought would be interesting. In addition to builds that we know that are relatively good or that they work. So I did my best, but if something is not here, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Some builds are not here and they are good. In every kind of section, whether it's endgame, early farming, leveling, whatever, it doesn't mean that it's bad just because it's not here. I just didn't have time for it, probably. Or I just don't like it, which is also sometimes a thing. And always remember, two reasonable minds can disagree. Having your own opinion is encouraged. This list is simply mine. So this is kind of important for me to say. I think people take these tier lists sometimes a little too seriously, and every time they see something they disagree with, they get a little too angry for no particular reason. I've seen plenty of tier lists that I disagree with placements on. Maybe I just value different things than the person who made them. It doesn't necessarily mean that the other person is a complete idiot or something like that. There's no real reason that adults would even go to that assumption. And we can just assume we value different things, and that's why we place things differently. And that's really okay. And that's the mindset I had making this, and that's the mindset I have when I'm reading other tier lists that are often different than mine in many ways. So, okay, let's go over to a few notes while reading. These will be some simple notes, nothing too crazy, right? Just a few notes, not too long. So a few shortcuts: CZ equal corrupted zones, RW equal rune word, AB equal act bosses. I wrote these before I even made the tier list, so I'm not even sure I use these shortcuts that much. But I guess we will see. A question mark means I either haven't tested enough or haven't seen enough for a strong opinion yet. There are some things, especially in the bossing category, which was not testable in tier 2 during the beta. Some things might be just in the question mark area. I have done some testing with offline bossing kills last season with characters I exported. I'm not sure what is the right word in English or which one applies to this current situation. I think it's imported, but I could be wrong. Feel free to let me know, I guess. Farming builds are ranked with solo play in mind, while group play is a big aspect of the game. I feel like it's a very dynamic aspect, and unless you're making specific lineups, in which case I don't think you need like a tier list, I guess. There are way too many dynamic situations for me to actually rank them in a way that looked consistent and informative to me. I tried thinking about this one and making categories for it. For group play, but it didn't seem like something that I was either knowledgeable enough or I could test enough to give proper results. I think you need like a team of people to test together to learn more about this. So I'm leaving this to people who do have that kind of group and can test these kind of things. So this tier list is for solo play exclusively. While there are builds that are great for P8 and for group play, it's mostly not important for this tier list. Early farming, that's a category in here, fresh out of the campaign, prior to any other farming being done. So no key items or rune words for your build. Highest rune is Lem. Basic crafts and finds enabled. So things that you can easily craft, find, or shop for are allowed on this category, but otherwise that's not not allowed. So basic finds are things like you can find a peasant crown, you can find sometimes a ghost shroud or things like that while playing for the campaign. These things happen, but you wouldn't necessarily rely on them otherwise. For cheap mappers, my definition works like this. After farming on your own with your early farming gear, this is the early farming. Cheap mappers, so after you farmed a little bit on this, you got yourself a torch and an Annie, and you have some currency to buy one big rune word or some key items. So for example, Storks usually buy Infinity, Zon might buy a Faith, Merc, right? If it's a multi-shot Zon, everybody has their own like big rune word. Some builds buy Enigma, some builds by like a Fortitude and a few key items. That's the general direction with this one. This category is not like it says cheap mappers. It's mappers that can start with just like this one big item or a few key items and the skillers. For me, this was usually we tried coming up with like how many days or how much time does it take to get to this. The general agreement is that most people get here at around like 30 to 40 hours of gameplay. Some people take less, some people take more. I honestly don't think it's too important. I think defining things based on how many days doesn't really make sense. Everybody plays a different amount of days and everybody plays on different days, so the hours are not the same and everything is different. Just the general idea, that's what I want to define it as. Endgame mappers, expensive setups with BIS or near BIS items and or slams. This is what we work towards and enjoy after we achieve it. If it was tested in the beta, then it was without slams, and its general power level, if I think, will significantly increase. So if I think a build was tested in the beta was a certain power level, but I think it will be much stronger once it gets slams, especially builds that rely on plus skill slams. Then I try to take it into account, but of course this is all speculative, so just remember that. Speed is tested for tier 3s as it is what I value. So while some builds may excel tier 1s, tier 2s, if their speed didn't seem to keep up with tier 3s, points were deducted. Please don't take it to heart, people who run tier 1s and tier 2s. Nothing wrong with running tier 1s and tier 2s. It's simply, again, what I value. In the endgame mapping category, usually these are very expensive builds, usually, not always. For me, I ever like running tier 3 maps. It's something that I personally enjoy. So again, that's why I rank things the way I do. Bossing, since I have a lot of experience bossing, I'm obviously heavily biased, and that was something I was trying to balance out while making this tier list. Keep that in mind while building your own experience. I can only talk about what's possible, and for some, a specific build might be easier than others, so feel encouraged to experiment. Remember that sometimes you just click with a build a lot better than other people would. Some people are really good with melee builds, some people are better with ranged ones, and that's perfectly fine. So just keep those things in mind. Sometimes even if something is easier for me, it doesn't mean it would necessarily be easier for you. But again, I can only talk about my experience. Difficulty is ranked accordingly based on my experience. Gear cost is speculative and refers to ladder reset prices, meaning later spikes in costs are not taken into account roughly within the first 2 to 3 weeks. So again, I'm taking on my experience. I've done season resets since season 8 pretty much, so I am relatively new to the project in my head because it's only been like 5 or 4 seasons that I've done the reset on. But that's the experience I'm drawing from. I'm trying to keep it according with what I know. Again, so that's what the prices refer to, and yeah, just keep that in mind. Links are for useful guides and information or demonstrations. I'm hoping to have most of these filled out. Again, I'll be trying to work on this as much as I can as the season goes, to add as many links as possible to this tier list. Again, the links will make sense in a moment that I'm talking about links. In instances where I lack a video guide, I will try to link other sources of information. Remember, there are a lot of useful links on the main Discord, not my Discord, the main Pd2 Discord. There are a lot of useful links there, a lot of good information, a lot of good people to ask questions, right? So again, it's you don't always have to rely just on this. If you find something here and you're not sure how to explore it, using the main Discord is also very recommended. Some links may be from previous seasons, so make sure to take patch notes into account. If you see a link and it states it's from season 10 or season 9, or if somebody links you on the Discord and it's a guide from previous seasons, make sure you check either by asking or by just looking at the change logs. Was this build changed in patch notes? Was damage nerfed? Was it had some sort of quality of life change? Was there some item that may be suddenly relevant? These are all questions that are worth asking just in general. Because sometimes patch notes do change some things about some builds. Sometimes just the meta changes a little bit and people discover new options and explore them in the future. So again, make sure you ask. Early bossing refers to doing early kills and ladder reset when gear is still far from perfect. For newer players to Uber, these builds will be capable of doing Ubers and are good options for first attempt and lower difficulties. I feel like I worded that very poorly. What I mean is that for newer players, the builds that are listed there would be good options to try your first attempts at like Ubers and declone, things like that. Even if you have a little bit more gear than the minimum gear requirement, but they are ranked within their like minimum gear requirements. So that's what I meant, but maybe this is poorly worded. If you see this, and by this I mean this little dotted lines here, it means I don't recommend it. It doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means that it's something I don't necessarily recommend. And yeah, just keep that in mind. Tier 2 bossing is not with perfect BIS gear, but refers to early season kills, first 2 weeks mostly. So again, in the first in the first 2 weeks, there are a lot of people racing to do the first tier 2s, being like the first, the second, the third, especially for the special auras that you get for it. That's what mostly the tier 2 bossing category is for. Remember that it is very speculative, since they were not all of them were tested in online during season 12 or with the patch notes, because the beta does not allow for tier 2s to be tested. Okay, so that's kind of the changes here. Let's start with the first class finally. That's the part where most of you probably skipped using the timestamps, and this is the Druid. He's the first class that I'm doing. As you can see, I'm adding links as I can from videos that I've done before. So we had the Druid SSF challenge, so you can use it for leveling and for early gearing, or during leveling tips from the leveling tips guide. Both of these would be useful. And the first section in every class is the leveling recommended path. This is just, again, not the only way to do it, more than one way to skin a cat, but this is the way that I prefer to do it. On most of these recommended paths, I have either, I have a minimum of 3 full runs from nothing to declone on these builds. I try to gain as much experience as I can in like the off season with these kind of runs. So again, that's kind of like what I recommend personally for the Druid. I recommend to level with Summoner, relying on Ravens early on, later on Bears, paired with Act 4 Dark Merc for the Amp. And this is, again, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to level, and I very recommend it for beginners. Again, could just be my, my preference, but this was for me the easiest one. Druid was always the class that was easiest for me to play. Speed A, safety A, this mostly refers to how fast you get through the campaign in solo play and how safe it is. Since you have some summons, once you kind of get through the, to level 20 something, you start getting wolves, and then you also get the bears. This is relatively safe. You have a teleport, but you don't really spam it as much as a sorceress, so you're usually not in too much danger. The gear needs, or I wrote gear needs, I mostly mean like rune words and items that you should be familiar with. We got Lord, Neophyte, Ancient's Pledge, Smoke, and Stealth, Smoke and or Stealth. These are just rune words. You can look them up and see what they mean in the leveling tips, and usually in the SSF guides that explain what these are, and I use them. So you can always check those out if you're not sure how to find rune words. But if you just search up Pd2 rune words on Google, I'm sure that you'll find them. Next section is for early farming. So over here, these are used to farm after you get out of the campaign, and maybe you have a few items you found not necessarily good for your build, but just a few items or a few crafts that you did. The 2 builds that I enjoyed farming with the most, and I felt the best for farming early on, were Summoner and Fissure Druid. The change to Fissure with the extra synergies felt pretty good for early farming. I tried cows with it and Corrupted Zones, and generally speaking, farming Corrupted Zones in Season 12 is very good because it drops a ton of maps. So again, I recommend checking them out. Builds that could farm Corrupted Zones really well will do pretty solid in early farming, because maps do sell early on, so definitely a way to go about it. I try to list the mercs that I personally use with these. It doesn't mean that that's the only option, just the options that I like. And obviously there's like the safety aspect to it, how safe they are. Fissure Druid, because he kind of lacks the tanky things around him. He's pretty fragile. He can't go into shapeshift too much because there's no points for it. So again, a little bit less safe than the Summoner. Versatility, Summoner can do pretty much everything. Fissure Druid is more limited to cows, Corrupted Zones, and he can do some early mapping if you hit like a few nice items, or maybe a good craft and a good pelt. But otherwise, he stays kind of in these zones, so he's a little bit less versatile. In terms of speed of farming, Summoner just seemed more consistent in getting better items, faster in clearing areas, faster clearing keys. So I prefer Summoner personally. And in the speed department. Again, these are just general guidelines, so it could be that people would be very much fine with the speed on Fissure Druid. This is not too dramatic in my eyes. Again, it's just mostly down to how I play the game. Early bossing. So for early bossing, we tested both in the beta and outside of the beta as well. And I was kind of I wasn't surprised that like Summoner, despite like the nerfs last season, is still doing great. In Ubers, is one of the best early Ubers in general, I think. Extremely safe, very easy to run, doesn't require a lot of gear. I've done this kill a lot of times, and you can really rely on like all the cheap rune wards and the cheap plus skills that you can consistently get, pretty much, and they always work. So again, Summoner doing really good in early Ubers. I think he's an S tier Uber runner, especially due to its immense safety. In declone, he can also do very, very well. One of the better early decloners. He's not too hard to play. Again, you just summon your bears and ravens and you let them kind of do the job, and you have, you know, all the time in the world to just run around and be safe. That's why he gets the big safety, the big S for safety. You can also run him as a shapeshifter summoner as well, which gives you even more life and even some damage reduction. So again, safety S, very easy to play. Gear requirements are low, pretty amazing. We did test some early bossing with the Wind Druid. The Wind Druid, while in Ubers, wasn't that amazing. It was pretty underwhelming. Had to drink a lot of potions because you don't really have anything to tank for you, and keeping the Merc alive is pretty hard with this. He was doing a lot better in Declone. He did require quite a few items. You wanted to get like all these like either caster crafts with a lot to twisters, or to get like a nice pelt to give you a bunch of plus skills. So again, could require some gear to do this, but we managed to do pretty solid declone with pretty low level gear still. If you are running an early Wind Druid, you could probably do these yourself if you'd like, but again, not the easiest. Safety B, because he is pretty fragile, and medium difficulty again because you have to do a lot more dodging and to kind of do a lot of aggroing with your bear to change like a declone or the Uber's aggro. So again, keep those things in mind. Gear requirements high. Maul and Rabies, both are shapeshifters. They're pretty tanky early on to do Ubers or to do declone. If you're a melee build like Maul, or even if you're a build that needs to get close like Rabies, before you get all tanky, it can be pretty scary. It can be a little harsh in the beginning because you can be popped by things like Mephisto or Bale, or even the Diablo fire, even though usually the leech against Diablo helps quite a lot. So that's why I'm giving them a B in Ubers before you get your actual gear. They are a little bit scary there. For Diablo, for Declone, I mean, they seem to be doing good. So even after the nerfs, we tested like a very budgety, nothing gear, Maul almost naked. It seemed to be doing great. I do recommend now focusing on Hunger instead of focusing on Oak as a second spirit. It seems like you're gonna have to shed some of the tankiness to do more damage and be more consistent in that regard. Specifically for Declone, it's still important, especially early on. But again, doing still pretty good. Rabies, fairly safe build in Declone. You kind of attack the pillars and you run around. You will need a few gear pieces to make it work early on. From my experience, I couldn't make it work without a few important gear pieces. So again, the gear requirements for this one is high. For these are medium. For Mulberry, you basically just need a weapon. Even if it's gonna break at the end, you just need like some kind of weapon that can run it. In terms of difficulty, easy for Maul because he is just holding right click, and for Rabies, you do need a little bit more dodging and kind of finessing like the skeletons there. So again, this one got a medium from me. Here I have a link of Uber's and Declone demo for Summoner. I'm hoping to do more demonstrations, have more links here. Again, I'll do my best to have as much as possible here. And yeah, I'm just working on it as much as I can. And hopefully we'll have here links for everything. For the cheap mappers category, I want to not show the end there, so it's not distracting. So for this part, I've had 6 builds that I put into cheap mappers. Again, remember there was explanation of what that means in the beginning. For a summoner, I had bears here, the summoner bears. This is also called Summoner Zoo or Summoner Bears. You don't have to run it with a Den Mother. It's just what we ended up preferring in the end for this summoner. So again, safety A, you have a bunch of summons. You're pretty tanky overall. You have room for max block as well on this build, which makes you pretty safe. Speed felt like an A to me. Again, we recorded a bunch of like test runs in tier 1s and tier 2s. This is the cheap mappers are not tested in tier 3s, they're tested in tier 1s and tier 2s. And it seemed like even with not that much gear, again, I had a Den Mother, Skillers, and a Demon Machine. I also tested Wrap setup. So again, we have like a Rune Ward or a key weapon, Skillers, and maybe like a key item, and Torch Annie. That was kind of like the setup. Everything else was like either low-level uniques or whatever are usually acceptable to just have at that stage. So generally speaking, that's the line that we tested across. Tier 1, tier 2, the average speed was fine. It was doing pretty well. And also included in summoners, of course, there's always the quality of life that while you clear, you have time to loot. So again, a lot of people either test without looting completely or test with looting. Normally I test without looting because everybody has their own looting preferences, but for builds that have natural time to loot while their summons do kind of like the damage, I think there is like some extra points for speed, because at the end of the day we all do loot at some point, so it is important to kind of take that into account. Next build is Fury. Fury's it's an Earth Walker build. That's how I call the melee builds who have to walk around for their mobility. Even though it walks pretty fast, in the maps it didn't feel that good. Either way, we used an Act 2 offensive initially, and we tried an Act 5 Might Merc as well. Safety is S. Again, you're super tanky, you have a lot of damage reduction, and you have a lot of room for PDR and max resistances as well. So again, there's no problem with this build. Generally speaking, if you're running Fury in maps, my assumption is that you are trying to build your bosser, and you want to boss with Fury, which is perfectly fine. It's a great bosser. Nothing wrong with Fury. So again, that's my assumption going into this. So it's okay that it doesn't clear maps very fast. I recommend running fortified maps on these, and I considered putting in notes for like, fortified, and maybe I should be doing that, right? Just like, I don't know why it doesn't let me write right now for some reason. So I guess we'll just figure this out at some other time. Oh, because I'm in the viewing only mode. Never mind. I know why it doesn't let me do that. I didn't want to accidentally do stuff when I'm doing the tier list. Oh, when I'm going over it. So that's why I put it in viewing only. Either way, the thing you want to purchase early is a good weapon. That's the first thing you want to invest in. Everything else can be pretty mediocre. Again, you can buy yourself all sorts of things to make yourself stronger, but the good weapon is your first priority, and it's what you're going to spend most of your currency on. Windhammer can be a good budget option because it doesn't require expensive jewels or expensive slams. It just needs 6 sockets and a bunch of shales to be pretty solid, but you'll usually want a better weapon after that. There are a lot of good examples, but I'm not going to go over all of them. You'll just have to visit a Fury guide or ask on the Discord, because this would make this video very, very long otherwise. Next one is Fire Druid. I tested it early on with an Act 4 Dark Merc, but you can of course go with an Act 2 Defiance Merc as well. Again, this is mostly a preference whether you want more damage or more safety. Both are okay. I tested it with just Infinity and Skillers. We used crafted the club and like a spirit shield for it. So again, very budgety stuff, nothing too crazy on it, very cheap stuff. This was my strat in season 10. That's what I started with, a Fire Druid, and I basically started with an Infinity, a bunch of Skillers, Torch, and an Annie, and all of my other gear was pretty much shit gear, and I cleared tier 1 maps at an insane speed repeatedly. The only reason I have this at A is because you do take a lot of time, again, for safety, like for reason of not dying. You want to be a little bit more cautious. It's before you have like a very very tanky setup, a very strong setup, and very complete setup. So again, I deducted points for speed because it did seem like if you go too fast you will die, but otherwise it can run maps extremely fast. The next setup was the Wind Druid early on. We tried it with both an Act 4 Dark Merc and Act 2 Defiance Merc. I like the Defiance more. I didn't feel like I need the extra damage on the early setup, but you can do even more damage with the Amp. So if you want more Amp, you can go for it. Act 2 Defiance with a Reaper Stole was also fine for me personally, but again, up to you guys, whatever you like. We used Horizon. We actually used a bad Horizon, a badly rolled one, with like 4 to Twisters instead of 6. Skillers, Fenris, and Twilight. As you can see, since there is no big rune wards here that we didn't use any expensive gear, I allotted him a few more key items instead of like one big item, because it didn't seem like there is one big item that's super expensive that he will need. All of these were without slams, without sockets, just plain items with average rolls, not perfect rolls. So again, that's what we used on him. Everything else was rare gear that wasn't hard to get. Overall, this build did insanely well. Managed to do 4-minute tier 1 maps already with just these few gear pieces. In my opinion, one of the better budget options for Druid in terms of mapping. Very, very fast. Safety is kind of average. It's not too good, not too bad. You do have summons with you. You do have your Hurricane with you. So I think it is pretty solid. But for some people who don't like teleporting super aggressively, this will be not, not the best. But you can just teleport like in a safer manner if you'd like. The reduced cooldown on Gust feels incredibly well, especially early on before you have all of your thing maxed out. So again, very big quality of life change for the Wind Druid. Next one is Arctic Blast. Act 2 defensive with an Infinity is what we went with. Has big safety because again, cold, freezing a lot of stuff around you, and teleporting in a fairly safe manner because you do have a lot of range. Speed-wise, it didn't do as well as the other elemental ones. I don't know if it's because of my my gameplay, or because it felt like the teleport was still bugged when we were testing it. I still don't know if the bug was fixed or not. It felt still very difficult to teleport consistently after the channeling, but maybe it could just be skill issue on my end. Infinity skill is, and we used a Frostwind for a sword. We used like a imperfect, like a badly rolled Frostwind with no sockets or anything. And next one is Maul. For Maul, again, very similar to Fury, nothing too different outside of the weapons you'd like to use. We used an Executioner's Justice. Again, you can use whatever weapons you like, or whatever weapons you can find, but that will be your first big investment. You want to get a good weapon, if you can, have it do as much damage as possible with EDIS jewels, and if it can be ethereal, that's even better, unless it hurts its DPS. For more tips about which weapons and how to jewel them, you can either check my videos on them, the speed calculator that you can find from the POD speed calculator, or ask on the Discord. Many helpful people in the Druid chat there. They're a great chat, and yeah, you can always ask them. They're very reliable. Alright, and lastly, we have endgame mappers. Oh, not lastly, sorry, there is tier 2 bossing as well. So we have Summoner Zoo. This is like the general summoner that summons bears, wolves, ravens, and all that. And I run it as a green goblin summoner. So again, you wear a Templars, you wear a beast, and you wear a Phoenix shield. And you kind of jump around, letting your Merc do a lot of damage with the Act 1 Demon Machine Merc. I felt that the change to the Pierce was actually pretty strong. We managed to do very consistent 5 to 6 minute clears, with extra time to loot as well, because you are a summoner. So very, very strong and consistent build. I don't know why it feels like a lot of the community doesn't value it as highly as I do. But we did, we did like 5 maps in a row that were just very, very consistent. Then I continued playing it on my off time. Again, this is the build that I'm starting with, so I'm not saying this to make people play a build I think is bad. I think it's good, and I am playing it. So I don't know if there's like a bigger vote of confidence. Extremely safe. Didn't need to use potions almost at all. Throughout, like, I think session of 10 plus maps that I did off stream, which is, I always like not drinking potions. The Phoenix seemed to be doing fine. I didn't go for max block. I just went for like max tankiness because it was a little hard to block with a Phoenix shield. But I'm sure that if you get like some increased chance to block slams on your gear, you can definitely make this go full block. And it would feel not that bad. It's just the frames for Druid can suck sometimes, so I usually avoid it. But again, up to you and to your choice. But otherwise, pretty tanky. I didn't see the summons almost die at all on the setup ever since they changed like the wolves to be a little bit tankier. This build feels very nice to play, so I'm pretty big fan. I played it without a Den Mother. You can play it with a Den Mother. You can do whatever you want. The main source of damage is the Act 1 Fizzmerk, and you have to juice them with very strong jewels and very strong gear so they can actually clear stuff. That's why the gear costs are pretty high, even though you can start mapping with this on a budget. For Summoned Vines, this the Creeper Druid. Again, another build I haven't seen a lot on other people's lists. This build safety is S tier. This is a build that requires one hand only to play. I've done several maps with it without touching. Not my rejuves, not my other. Yeah, I just didn't use my other hand. Basically, it's like a one-handed build. You basically just teleport on this build and make stuff die with your vines and mercenary. There are 3 good setups for mercenaries: Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. The Act 3 one is a little more complicated. Act 1 is basically a Demon Machine Merc. Act 2, we did like a Plague Merc. With Act 2, Innocence, Ferocity on both of them. And you basically just want to deal as much damage as possible, and you're only teleporting non-stop. In safety, again, your summons don't die, you don't die, and you hardly even lose life. The only problem is sometimes your mana goes down, and mana might need potions, but otherwise, this build is incredibly strong and safe. And you can even run max block, which is what I ended up doing for this build. So again, super strong build, and I really recommend it. For speed, I said A, possibly S. We didn't manage to push it to the S category within my criteria in the beta, but I believe that it is probably going to be working once you get to the live version, because it just lost so much power level from being on the beta. So I do believe that it could be pushed to S tier. A friend of the stream that has tested this in the live version swears by it and says that he can push it to S, and we'll see it next season. I'll modify this once this happens, and if it doesn't happen, it'll just stay in A. Fire Druid was slightly nerfed, and it wasn't that big of a deal. In speed, he gets an S+. It's one of the few builds that do get an S+. It's a consistent sub 4 minute tier 3 mapper. Even in the beta, we managed to do it without like a lot of slam. So again, I believe this is one of the fastest builds in the game. Fire Druid, just a slap on the wrist nerf, honestly, and I think it's still incredibly strong. Again, you will compromise some safety for that speed, so you can go even faster if you'd like. The mercs are either Act 4 Dark Merc, Act 2 Defiance Merc. If you run them, you get an Infinity, or you go with an Act 3 Merc with an Exile and either a Stormlash or a Doom if you want a little bit more safety. There's all sorts of options there. Again, gear costs are high, just a ton of facets and a ton of like expensive gear that is usually also competed on pretty hard. We have the Wind Druid next with an Act 2 Defiance Merc. Safety B, again, he teleports and telestomps pretty aggressively, but doesn't have exactly the health pool to back it up. Speed A, managed to get consistent 5 to 6 minute maps on this guy. Gear costs are pretty low. The gear is not very contested. You'll need an Innocence for your Mercenary most of the time, an Innocence Ferocity, so he can keep you safe. But other than that, all the rest of the gear was pretty cheap, and wasn't really that big of a deal to get going. For Arc Blast, an Act 2 Defiance Merc with with the Infinity, I used just a normal setup for the Merc, since this build is not telestomping. Just give him a bunch of survivability, and then you just get a bunch of plus skills and cold facets for you. Gear is pretty high. Again, use the Night Wings, use the Snow Clash, the Arcanes with facets, or Carapace with facets. So again, can be very expensive. That's how just elemental builds kind of work. Fire Claws, we tested mapping with Fire Claws with some endgame gear. Safety is A, it's extremely tanky. The leech on it is a little bit more shady compared to Fury and Maul, so I deducted a few points for safety there, because the leech was a bit worse, depending on the weapon they use. If you use like a Hellslayer, it'll be a little bit better, but if you use things like Ghost Flame or Hellrack, it'll be a little worse. In terms of speed, I couldn't get this build to clear very fast. Again, it's a ground walker build. In terms of which one we found better or worse, we found that the bear version cleared better than the Fury version. It seems like the extra damage you get from bear felt a little bit nicer in the maps, and we were running fortified maps for all 3 of these Earthwalker builds. Again, they all got the same clear speed. I personally thought Maul was still clearing the fastest in maps out of these 3. It could just be that it's better in fortified than in non-fortified. These two do better, but we tested both of these in fortified and non-fortified, and they did better in fortified too, so I don't really know what to say other than that. You can run Act 1 Vigor for speed, or Act 4 Dark Merc for amp, or Act 2 Offensive for getting Deadly Strike and attack rating. Of them are viable. Just check whatever you like. With the Maul, I just wanted Vigor because he was really killing stuff fast enough. I just wanted him to go for the map. Gear prices high for Fireclaw and Maul. just because the weapons usually cost a lot, and for Fireclaw the facets also are very expensive. Fury was a little bit cheaper. I think the weapons for Fury are a bit less contested. There are just less Fury druids, and they use different weapons normally or different breakpoints, so they again get a few things a little cheaper. And Rabies, finally, using Act 1 Vigor, Safety A. While it is a fairly tanky build, it still doesn't have insane sustain on it, so safety goes to A and not an S. In terms of speed, clears map very fast, relatively safe. Gear cost not too high, poison facets are cheap, so it gets that criteria. And finally, now we get to the last category, which is tier 2 bossing. I'm now realizing how long of a video this is going to be, so I'm kind of bracing myself for a very long recording. Alright, so in tier 2 bossing, you have Summoner. This is amazing declone runner, a pretty average, or not average, like a pretty solid Rathma and Lucian runner with the S plus safety. I don't think there are a lot of builds as safe as Summoner. It has both the both the privilege of being a summoner, but also a tanky build. So most summoners are usually pretty fragile once they get their summons wiped. But with this one, you can turn into a werewolf to get damage reduction, good FHR, and also pretty good health pool. So again, this one gets this rank. For Lucian and Rathma, again, it's mostly a matter of like your bears are pretty easily wipeable now. It's hard to resummon them. So some people may struggle with it in Rathma and Lucian. But in Declone, it's pretty amazing and pretty consistent from everything that I tried. Difficulty easy, not very hard to run. It does take a little bit of getting used to like how the proximity for summons works and where you summon them and what they will attack, but otherwise not very hard fight in my opinion. Minimum gear costs are pretty low actually on this build. You need like some plus skills, but the gear itself is not extremely expensive to run tier 2s, and I've done this on several budget setups already after the nerfs in season 11. Rabies, a very solid decloner. Again, relatively fast. You run around, you hit the pillars, things die, and you just need to make sure that you're dodging correctly. In Rathma, he suffers a little bit, and Lucian Thor, it feels like the fights are a little bit slower, and that he needs a few more rejuice than others to clear the fight. He can be overrun sometimes by the portals because he doesn't clear them as fast as other builds, especially in the Druid category. That was my experience with Rabies, at least. Safety A, it's a shapeshifter build, but it is a melee build. It does take some time to kill stuff, so safety goes down. Again, the longer fights are, the more chance you have to make mistakes. That's why safety sometimes also is tied to how fast a build is in the certain fight, in my opinion. Longer fights, more room for mistakes, generally speaking. Difficulty, medium, and min gear costs are medium. You just need your right Jalals, your Plague Bearer, and your shields with facets, but otherwise it's pretty easy, and facets for poison are pretty cheap. So we got Fury next, Declone B, again, because it's a melee build and because Fury and Declone is pretty much a damage check. If you have the right weapon, you will do okay, but till you have the right weapon or till you have enough damage, this fight will be a little bit of a struggle in terms of your potions. You might just run out of potions. Usually never die with this build. It's just a matter of losing all of your potions because you just took a lot of damage. Rathma in A, I think is pretty solid in Rathma. I think people are underestimating him in the Rathma pit. I've done kills on him in season 11 and season 10 with a Fury Druid. I think it's a very solid Rathma. He has good FHR and a lot of damage reduction. It's actually super useful there and makes general runs with Fury pretty consistent. In Lucian, his immense leech from Feral Rage keeps you topped off. The minimum potions I've used on Fury was 2 in season 11. So Fury, again, super strong for Lucian in my opinion. General safety is S, pretty easy to run. And minimum gear costs are high because you need a good ethereal weapon to get going, and a lot of other gear that usually can only be used in one fight. So you'll need several pieces of gear, like several armor, several helms, and things like that. It's hard to overcap his resistances and get all the things that you need. So again, a little bit high on there. Maul is like a better Fury pretty much. I think even after the nerfs, I already did like a kill on non-leather just to see if you feel the nerfs from the changes on both of them. Again, I still think like Paul is still a little bit better than Fury, which I'm okay with. It's not like I have a problem with that. In Declone, again, Declone is a damage check for Maul, so early on, before you get a really good weapon, Declone will be a little bit of a struggle, in my opinion, for a lot of runners. That'll be the most struggling part that Mo will have. In Rathma and Lucian, I still think that he will do immensely well. His problem there wasn't really losing damage. It's more just like navigating the fight as a melee character. So once you get used to that, you should be fine. Safety S, again, you're extremely tanky, and difficulty is very easy because you just hold the right click and things kind of die. Minimum gear costs are high. The gear was very competitive as well, especially last season it was very expensive. So just keep those things in mind. Fireclaw, again, very similar to Fury. They dish out pretty similar damage. Just Fireclaw is a bit worse FHR, but a little bit more damage. In Rathma, because of the high fire resistances in Rathma, getting the right pierce is a little bit difficult for Fireclaw. He can do Rathma in tier 2s, but it's a little bit of a struggle. So you got a B, and then Lucian, again, one of the better Lucian clearers out there, extremely strong, and didn't even get nerfed that much by the changes. So I think this will be one of the best Lucian clearers in Season 12. For safety, he gets an S again, extremely tanky, very hard to die with this build. Easy, because you just hold the right click and it kind of works. Minimum gear costs are high. It's now a mix of both running some Maul gear, but also running fire facets together. So again, very expensive gear overall. Lastly, we have the Fire Druid. I managed to do a Lucian kill on this guy. I haven't done the tier 2 Rathma kill yet. I found it more challenging, and the Declone kill, again, also was challenging, but was definitely doable. I've tested this offline, so I'm sure it'll be more difficult online. This is the only build here that got it hard for me because I found it personally challenging. So I think new players to this will probably also find it pretty challenging. That's just a small guess there. Again, Rathma was a little hard, especially because of the big fire resistance, and killing the Void Knights was a little bit annoying. With this build, it was a little bit hard to get them all pretty fast, especially if you get decrept, it feels a little bit tough. But otherwise, very strong build. Gear costs are very high because it's Fire Druid, and the gear is already very competitive. And I put in demonstrations that are not mine that I think do a pretty good job to showing how this build should be played and what the gear should look like. That's kind of what I was trying to emulate when I was doing my kills offline. So again, that's a few demonstrations there. Now we finally move to the second class. I'm going to put a note for myself for the timestamps so I know exactly when that's happening. The next class is Sorceress. So let's go over here. Now that you kind of know the structure, this will be a lot faster, hopefully. And I'll be able to breeze through this and only stop on the things that need to be stopped on. So for leveling, I recommend Firewall. You start with just leveling some points in Inferno or Blaze for the first levels, and then you start dumping your points in Firewall. Firewall clears, even in Players 8, very strong. Speed S, access to teleport, and extremely fast. You just need some FCR in the early stages. Safety C, if you just teleport like a maniac, you will die, especially if you find a pack of souls somewhere. I run Act 2 defensive generally, but you can also run an Act 4 Dark Merc with an Insight if you don't find an Insight for an Act 2 defensive Merc. Generally, I like the defensive more, so you can tank for me, but the Act 4 Dark Merc, once you go into Meteor, will give you some extra damage. It's just up to you, whatever you like and whatever you prefer. I respec at around level 45 to 49. That's usually in like Act 3 or Act 4 Hell, and Nightmare, sorry, in my experience, when running solo. Mostly I do this because that's when you can kind of max your Meteor and get a bunch of points to Fire Mastery. But you can do that later if you'd like. Firewall is capable of finishing the campaign almost as well as Meteor. Meteor just does also physical damage, which makes it, in my opinion, the best leveling option for the Sorceress. Some rune words you need to know: Lore, Leaf, Smoke, Stealth, and Insight are all important. Now let's go to early farming. I chose one build per element. We tested budget setups for all of those on the stream to make sure you can farm with them. I even did like a demo with Blizzard farming and with Meteor farming during the open beta. Again, if you're running Meteor, farming act bosses and keys is your bread and butter, but you can farm everything in the game. You have fire and physical damage, so pretty much anywhere. Safety B, you're a Sorceress, you are fragile, but speed S, versatility S. Amazing build for farming early. If you want to stay in LOD, as long as you don't go into maps, you can do anything else. Chain Lightning, this build, in my experience, just sits in Arcane. It farms it pretty solidly. It wasn't the fastest Arcane farmer from all the things we tested. That was the Assassin Trapper, actually. But again, it did very well there. and felt pretty solid, especially with the buffs to Chain Lightning. I ran an Act 2 defensive Merc, simple stuff. It wasn't very versatile, but farms relatively fast, and safety B, it's a Sorceress. Pretty fragile if you're not careful. Third one is Blizzard. We tested Blizzard in Chaos Sanctuary in Act Bosses and in Keys. While it was very, very strong, again, it was slightly less versatile than Meteor, but very solid early farmer, and I loved it for early farming. I did demonstration for it. It was very, very nice, very solid. Benefit of this is that while you're dropping your blizzards, you can also loot in between, which is fairly nice as well. All right, for early bossing, we tested 4 builds total for early bossing on the Sorceress, and generally speaking for Ubers, as you can see, I had a C for Meteor. Personally, I think Meteor needs a lot more gear than the other 2 options, Blizzard and Firewall. And in the past, I've done like a run with Meteor all the way to Declone. I've done a run now in the open beta with Blizzard, with Ubers and Declone. I've done Firewall in the past. Ubers with Hydras, I personally don't recommend early on. It didn't feel very consistent, even with quite a few plus skills. So again, that's generally for Ubers. For Declone, Meteor did fine, and Firewall also did fine. Blizzard and Hydras were a lot easier. The only reason I have Blizzard in A for Declone is only because of like how fragile it is before you get a lot of life, pretty much. But in terms of damage, it's doing amazing. I've done again a kill on the open beta. That was, I think, the first any on the softcore at least side of things for the open beta. Extremely strong, very, very capable of bossing early, and very, very nice. For safety, B, again, very fragile. C for Meteor, it's only because it felt like with Meteor I had more range issues compared to Blizzard. I could drop it and be more safe. I had to cast it less times, so there's less places where you kind of get hit. And also when I was dodging things like the lightning hose and things like Uber attacks, it felt like easier to dodge when I had Blizzard rather than when I had Meteor. So again, could be just my small bias there. Maybe it's the other way around for other people. This one got a hard for me, just because again the Ubers and the Declone fight were a lot longer and a lot more tight. For Blizzard, it felt pretty easy to run. Hydras and Firewall are medium. If you're good at like directing your Firewall, especially in like skeleton phases for Declone, you should be doing fine. Hydras is just about getting used to the pace of the fight and just running around unleashing like the little minions. In terms of gear requirements for early kills, Blizzard and Firewall were the lowest one. Hydras just need like a plus skills that you can find like on orbs. I found like a +6 Hydra orb in this open beta, for example. You can find something like that and do Ubers pretty easily. Or not Ubers, sorry, you can do Declone pretty easily with that kind of gear. And for Meteor it was a little higher. I needed a lot more plus skills than the other builds. Somewhere around 32 was where it started feeling good compared to 27 on the Blizzard. So 5 plus skills difference is pretty big in my book. For cheap mappers, Sork seems to have, in my experience, the worst transitioning into maps. And it's not a bad thing. She shines in LD just so strongly that moving into maps is not her strong suit. So for early mappers, again, I chose one of each element, or I tried to choose one of each element. The 3 early mappers that I thought were viable, not insane, but viable, were Frozen Orb. Once you get like an Infinity and Full Tales, it was doing pretty well. Again, one big rune word, Killers. Full Tales is optional, you can just use random gear as well, but Full Tales is usually pretty cheap to slap together. And it did pretty well on the setup. It was doing pretty solid. We had Charge Bolt. I used Infinity Skills and the Griffins, and everything else was... this is a self-wheeled Infinity, by the way. This is a Merc Infinity, just to clarify. And Griffins, that's all that I ran. Everything else was pretty bad. Of course, no slams, no facets, no nothing like that. Speed-wise, they were both okay. Frozen Orb was slightly faster. And for safety, again, I know you can run Energy Shield and make this a lot safer, but that also reduces the clear time. So that is to be taken in mind. I ran it with the, with the Thunderstorm, and also checked with Maxing Teleport. Both of them did kind of okay. Enchant Bowsork. This was slightly nerfed at the end, at the last patch during the closed beta, but still seemed to be doing fine. We tried an Act 3 per Merc and Act 2 defensive Merc for this one. You can run Infi on the Act 2, or instead of that, not run an Infi and have an Act 3 permerc just for the sustain. Both of them were okay. I prefer the Infi version personally, but it's just kind of up to you. And you can run this either with a Widowmaker for the cold version or with Demon Machine for the fire version. Again, just something that you have to kind of take in mind. I don't know why I wrote the Infi in the link box there. Either way, the speed on it was very good. You kind of teleport and shoot your bow. I know this sounds crazy. Once I have the link up for this will make a lot more sense, I promise. The enchant bow sork is pretty strong. I don't believe in meme builds. I don't post meme builds. I just put builds that I believe in, and that's really all there is to it. And in endgame mappers, this is my list of mappers. We've got Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Frost Nova, Combustion, Charge Bolt Nova, Chain Lightning, Bow Sork, Cold, and Bow Sork Fire. So with all these things in mind, remember, this is just my biased tier list, and by biased I mean based on the things that I value. I run Frozen Orb. Safety seems to be A. You have an Instance Ferocity Merc. You don't have to telestomp, so overall you are pretty safe. And speed-wise, consistent 5-minute Phlegathons. Did some 40 even, I think was our best time. I don't want to open up all my notes right now and search through them, but Frozen Orb, incredibly fast. I've played this in the past, like on the live version. Frozen Orb is my favorite Sork builds for mapping. I think it's very underrated by the community, and it is what it is. If you've seen my demonstrations on Twitch, everybody who sees it normally agrees that it's a strong build, but I don't know what else to say. Once I have the guide up, it should have one of the demonstrations in it as well, so just keep that in mind. Blizzard, we tested it for mapping because of the changes. I just wanted to include it here because we did quite a bit of testing for it. Safety wise, felt like a B. It didn't kill the things fast enough, which left a lot of damage coming at you. In terms of speed, we ran it in fortified maps and it didn't seem to clear stuff very well. We tried it in non-fortified maps, and while it did kill some stuff, it just left too many stragglers and was a little inconsistent. The gear across are pretty medium, but again, the speed is not good in terms of clearing. Not a lot of kills per minute, and not a lot of speed in the full clearing of a map. For Frost Nova, I don't know why this build was nerfed in Season 12. It was just a solid build in the last season, in my opinion. Again, safety B, it's a telestomping Sorceress because you're a Nova Sork, so you have to kind of go in the middle of packs. So a little bit dangerous at times. I read this in Season 10 to a lot of success. Like, I was very much fine with it, but the nerfs both to Nightwing since then and to the range on Frost Nova in Season 12 kind of hurt the build. So again, the speed ended up being B on average, even though you can push it to sometimes be like a little bit faster than 6 minutes. It was a little bit slower in Season 12 for me. Combustion, it's a build that I play very aggressively. I played this build in Season 9, was my main Sorceress build. I've had over 500 hours on this build in Season 9, and I'm very happy to see it buffed back up again. It wasn't bad by any means last season, it was still good, but it was even faster in this season, and I'm really, really happy with it. Again, it's one of those builds that I feel like people think I'm exaggerating when I'm saying it's this good. I think it's an S tier build. I've done many demonstrations during the closed beta showing how strong this is. And as with regards to how softcore my gameplay on this is, all I can say is that yes, it is softcore gameplay because I do play softcore. It's not something to be ashamed of, or it's not like a problem at all. If you want to play hardcore, you can play hardcore and you can figure out your builds. You don't have to use mine. Anyway, next on is Charge Bolt. Charge Bolt is a very solid skill. They got a lot of changes in Season 11. It maintains a very strong, consistent mapping in Season 12 as well. Again, very, very nice build. Whether you run it with the Thunderstorm or with the max Lightning, or with the max Teleport, or if you're running with Energy Shield, it's always a very solid build. It's always doing pretty well. I couldn't push it quite to be like an S tier consistently. But I normally don't play lightning builds, so maybe it's also a matter of less experience, or just missing like slams and having like, you know, the good infinity base and all that things, all these kind of things that you can get in the trade ladder season. For Nova, again, it's a very similar situation to Charge Bolt. We managed to get it to run pretty fast, especially in tier 1s, tier 2s. It did really, really well. But once I brought it to tier 3s, it didn't quite keep up with Combustion and Frozen Orb. Could be an experience thing. Personally, I haven't seen a lot of people say this, like the S plus tier build in terms of speed. I have never seen these S plus tier speed clears. And personally, just as a genuine request, I'd love to see if people have seen a recording of this build clearing tier freeze in sub 5 minutes. People tell me that it's like 4.5 minutes to clear tier 3 maps. I'd love to see this video. I've never seen it, and I'd love to see it actually do that kind of speed. If I've seen enough of them and I'm convinced how, then generally I will update my ranking as well. I just have never seen it, and I haven't been able to push it myself. Chain Lightning in tier 3 maps didn't seem to keep up. It didn't seem to clear very well, so I wasn't very happy with its clear overall. And then we have the bow cold and the bow fire Sorc. The cold one refers to a multi-shot Widowmaker build, and the fire one refers to a demon machine setup with an explosive arrow being shot from the demon machine. Both of them were really strong. They don't require like a ton of pre-buff. I only used one item for pre-buffing the enchant cold or the enchant fire. I didn't do more than that. Generally while testing. Generally very strong setup, has a lot to be explored, and I think will be definitely more consistent in the live version, where slams are going to be vital to the amount of damage, attack rating, and pierce that this has. Again, once I have the demonstrations, hopefully this will all be clearer. But yeah, this is a pretty incredible build in Season 12, in my opinion, and I really recommend people to try it out. The bow fire Sorc with the demon machine, or the bow multi-shot with the Widowmaker. For people who like these kind of niche off-meta builds, this is definitely an option. For tier 2 bossing, we have 5 options. Meteor, that's the build that I've ran last season. Generally speaking, it was pretty hard in my experience to run this. And again, safety D, it's a Sorceress and D-Clone and Raphma, and Lucian, not very good. In Lucian, the fight was very challenging. I've since done a few other kills on Lucian that felt easier. They were on offline, but still easier. And for Raphma, this build was hard. Raphma Sorceress is hard, in my opinion, on all builds. I had no easy time trying a tier 2 Raphma and Sorc on any build. So again, Raphma is always C here, as you can see. Blizzard is speculative. It's the only one I haven't tested with the changes. So again, these are speculative ranks. Lucian, I have actually tried in already season 11. It was already better than Meteor back then, so I think the changes are only going to make it better. And I'm hoping that I can do these kills in Season 12. It's one of my goals for Season 12, to have my own kills here for demonstrations. I have some demonstrations from people like Kireen and Gabe for other kills who are pretty incredibly talented with the Sorceress and with other classes as well. So I wanted to showcase their kills here for Charge Bolt and Chain Lightning. They are from other seasons as well, so just take those things into account. But yeah, these are kind of the ranks for bossing on Sorceress. Mostly these. On Hydras, I don't recommend doing Raphma. I'm not saying it's impossible. I've tested it a little bit, and it could be that it is possible, very specific gear and a lot of skill. But it's very hard. I've done a Lucian kill, very hard. But overall safety is better on Hydra, because you do just kind of run around and you have a lot more time to run and dodge. And also it doesn't do Raphma, so you don't have that D for safety from the Raphma for the Sorceress. Alright, moving on to the next class. This one took us a lot less time, so I'm pretty happy with it. But I will also note the time where we move to the next class. Okay. Nice. We're doing good. We're doing good. Should have gotten more water, probably. I'll pause at some point to do that. But for now, Paladin. Again, I've done Paladin HCSSF, so maybe my Paladin HC knowledge is a little bit more up to date compared to other classes. But let's try. So for leveling paths, you have 2 options mostly. Either charge or normal and go into Holy Bolt for Nightmare and Hell, or just Holy Bolt all the way. You can do it. It's slightly slower in my experience. So, but overall, it is like fine. It's not like a big difference. I personally like charge, especially if I run with groups, because you give nicer auras early on compared to Holy Bolt, but it's just up to you and whatever you like. You use an Act 2 defensive or an Act 4 light merc for the Holy Bolt aspect. In the beginning, you just use normally an Act 1 merc for speed, but that doesn't really matter. Speed overall was around B. Safety is S. Very, very safe build. You have access to Salvation to overcap your resistances. You have Paladin shield bases that give you a ton of resistances. It's a ranged build. You have healing for your merc, and overall very, very safe. The things you want to know are Spirit in a Paladin base, Free Holy Bolt, Neophyte, Lore for the plus skills, and you want to try and get 75 FCR or 125 if it's possible, as fast as possible. For early farming, Holy Bolt and Vengeance are the two builds I'm recommending. Not the only ones, not the only two options I know, but these are the two builds I'm recommending. With Holy Bolt, you can farm pretty much anything in the game. Very versatile, very capable, and relatively fast. With Vengeance, you'll stick most of the cows, Arcane Sanctuary, or early maps if you do have enough firepower or lightning power in that case to get through them. Safety B, just because again you get close and personal and you're not super tanky yet. As like a fresh farmer. Versatility A, it can do quite a few things. With Vengeance is pretty flexible, and Speed B, mostly due to lacking mobility, not like early on, unless you max your Joust and lose some damage, but when I tried it, it felt like not too good in terms of speed of farming still. For early bossing, you have 3 options here that we tested during the closed beta. As well, Holy Bolt, Smiter, and Charge. Charge is like the classic tier 2 bosser, but it doesn't do too well before he gets a little bit of gear. It's a melee build, and the damage is a little bit low before you get that good weapon. I don't know why I started from the last one, but I guess I did. Safety B, again, mostly due to being a melee character, but does have a Holy Sword, which does help. Holy Bolt, amazing for Ubers, one of the best Ubers in early kills, for sure, definitely recommended for newer players. With Salvation keeping you safe, and Holy Bolt's healing your merc who's tanking for you. Declone is a little bit more grindy, a little bit slower, but still a fairly safe one, especially the skeleton phases are relatively easy, and you mostly try to contend with the Declone parts and try to dodge his damage while dealing damage to him. Safety A felt very safe, and you get access to max fire res as well as free points because you don't need them for anything else after kind of level 80. So you do get a few max resistance points, so that's pretty nice. Difficulty easy, not too hard to play. Low gear requirements, very nice. Smiter is here. This was pretty much a surprise to me, but we did do a little bit of testing on the Smiter for Declone and not for Ubers. I don't recommend it for Ubers. While this is a very difficult fight, it is doable with early budget gear. You basically just need a solid shield and you'll be okay. So I put the gear requirements in high, but we did manage to get the skill on a budget setup. Safety B, again, melee build. You do get to stun a lot of the skeletons. It's a little bit hard to do, but it does make you a little bit safer as well. Difficulty hard. This was very hard to pull off. We did do it like on the first try, but it was also very hard to pull off. It felt like a very challenging kind of build. So again, Smiter does exist in Project Diablo 2 as a bosser. As mapper, I really don't recommend it. Personally, for cheap mappers, we have here 5 options. It doesn't mean they're the only options, again, but these are the options that we kind of liked. So we had Fire Charger, we used a Flame Bellow, Dragon Chest, and Fire LCs. We didn't like do anything else really. The rest of the gear was pretty much Peasant Crown, I think. I don't remember if it was a Ghost Shroud or just like a normal crafted armor or rare armor that we used, but something like that. And just very normal basic gear, rare gloves, rare belt, rare rings, rare boots, and crafted, I think, amulet. So again, super basic stuff. We managed to do pretty solid on this. It was fairly nice. The speed wasn't huge, but it was, again, pretty solid. Sanctuary Sacrifice, or Sacrifice Magic aspect, running, again, active defensive, similar to the Fire Charger. We ran it with, I put safety at B because it's before your sustain is amazing, before your Act 2 Merc has like the instant ferocity to keep you safe. So again, nothing crazy there. Mostly focused on buying some. We bought magic LCs. You can buy also offensive GCs. The magic LCs are a little cheaper. Generally speaking, they're more easily achievable, but you can get offensive aura skillers. If you are getting offensive aura skillers, just make sure that every second level you're getting 1 more pierce. So make sure you're ending on the level that gives you pierce to magic resistance and not on the level that doesn't give you pierce from the aura level. That's just something to keep in mind. For a weapon, you want either Azarath or Redeemer. Then you want plus skill gear. If you are running Redeemer, usually you'd want to run a Beast Merc as well. Again, you can invest in it still. All of this gear is pretty cheap, and we allow for up to infinity plus skillers in here, so all of this is still much cheaper than that. Sacrifice physical. You pretty much want your physical stuff, so Schaefer's is your main weapon. I think it's one of the better weapons for this build until you get super good crafted ones. Veil and Fortitude, that's the kind of setup that we tested. Or an Act 2 offensive Merc or an Act 5 Might Merc. I like the Might Merc more on this build, but both are good, especially if you need attack rating. Safety, A, as long as your leech is doing right, and speed, A, cleared maps pretty fast, was pretty solid, and kills bosses pretty fast as long as you use Zeal and you don't use Sacrifice, because you just might die if you do that on bosses, so be careful. The next build is Vengeance. Vengeance is a very solid early mapper. You just need to find your right weapon, and pretty much everything else can be slapped together if you'd like. We're running an Act 3 Light Merc or an Act 2 Defiance Merc personally on this build. These were the two that did the best. And in terms of safety, again, melee build, so we felt it was B in safety. Maybe it was closer to an A, I'm not sure. It's before you get all of your sustain sorted out. We didn't have like every piece, you know, working together cohesively. So sustain sometimes felt like it's going a little bit low, especially since this is a teleporting build that jumps into packs very aggressively. So that is something to keep in mind when you're running this on budget. Make sure to be careful. You can of course compromise some of your clear speed for defensive, but that's not what I do when I test. So just keep that in mind. You can always tone this down to get more of this, generally speaking. Gamer Shred, Azarath, High Lords, Kiras. Again, not using any big rune words here, so you can just afford a few key gear pieces instead. I like Azarath the most, but finding a Gamer Shred early can sort out your early mapping. Gamer Shred is also what you normally use on early farming, either that or whatever Phase Blade you can get with a bunch of elemental damage. For endgame mappers, you'll see the word Sacrifice repeat here. Sacrifice builds in Season 12 are going to be nutty, especially if Senpai does what he planned on doing, which was changing like the cap of the Sacrifice to being 30. Apparently the change that is going on with the radius increase made it so that the levels 35 and 40 give increased range to a Sacrifice, but Senpai is considering at the moment of making this tier list, at least making it lower between 25 and 30 for the maximum range. That will make all of these builds even stronger. All these builds were tested without going for the maximum cap. They were going up to 30, so if they could go even higher, the speed of these builds and efficiency could be even higher. Just keep those things in mind. We have your Sacrifice magic, physical, cold, light, fire. Some of these I tested with native and non-native. Some of these I only tested with the native aura. So keep those things in mind. Lightning is native, for example. Cold we tested native and non-native. Both were pretty similar. Fire I tested only the non-native one. The Fire Dragon Din with like the two Dragon Rune Words and Hand of Justice. Magic I've tested. Obviously magic is native. And physical, you go with Fanaticism. All of them did really well. All of them got A for safety outside of cold. That gets like this very good freeze aura that keeps you very safe. I never had issues with this build. I've ran this in Season 10. Gear costs are generally either high or medium, mostly because you get like a bunch of expensive facets for them. For light, some of the gear seemed to be a little cheaper. This is again a little bit speculative, but the lightning facets usually are a little cheaper than cold and fire. So I put it in medium as well. Physical gear can be pretty expensive once you get to the end game. So again, that is what it seemed like. But again, that's just all speculation. Vengeance, while it is still a very strong build in late game, it doesn't keep up with the Sacrifice builds, mostly due to their insane AoE and insane damage. So again, very fast build, just not as fast as these amazing builds. Next one is Fire Charger. Fire Charger is relatively fast. Again, doesn't keep up quite with Sacrifice, slightly slower than it on average, but still very solid. A little bit safer as well because you don't telestomp as much. You still can use Joust though for a little bit extra mobility. Gear costs are still high because it uses pretty much the same gear. So if you are running Fired In, you can also change it into a Fire Charger to kind of play both of them in the same season, and most of the gear is pretty similar. Fizz Charger, I don't really like this for maps. It is a little bit slower. Generally, you can run this in maps. Normally, that only happens if you build him as a bosser and you want a map on the side. So if you do, then I guess the speed shouldn't matter to you too much. You just play him because you have him. Safety-wise, he was pretty fine. He was leeching, was pretty safe. Holy Sword keeps you safe as well. And you don't really telestomp, so you're pretty much fine most of the time. And lastly, Fire Bowden. This is the build with the Demon Machine, Paladin, and this was one of the best bow builds, I think, this season, in my opinion. Yes, better than the Amazon ones, in my opinion. My demonstration for it is going to be pretty sick, so hopefully I can release it as fast as possible. So look forward to this one. I think we cooked on this one. Is all I can say. For tier 2 bossing, let me go down over here. And we're being really efficient now after we've done the first one. I know Druid always takes me longer, but we got out of the way. Now we're cruising. So for tier 2 bossing, I have 4 builds here. We have Fizz Charger. I think in season 12 he's going to be one of the better Declone and Rathma runners with the nerfs to Maul and Blade Sentinel. Again, I don't think Maul will be bad. I don't think Blade Sentinel will be bad. I just think this was already pretty close to them before, so now it'll be probably a little bit more prominent. This and Zerk that we'll talk about next, I believe. So again, will be a very solid one for these two. And Lucian, he was always like a little bit worse. The damage wasn't as good as the other ones. He doesn't really die there. He's just very slow, so he gets overrun a little bit. I prefer things like Zeal for this fight because of the splash damage. So just keep that in mind. Not the best in Lucian, but pretty good for Rathma and Declone. He can definitely do it, and I've done it in SSF HC. So again, very safe, very easy to play. I put it in A for safety again, mostly because it's a melee build. Without like the biggest health pool, so again, safety in A, but Holy Sword does keep you pretty safe overall. Difficulty easy, mostly hold the right click, don't have to think about it too much. Main gear costs are pretty high. You need that very good weapon and just general gear as well, like the whether it's the Andes and the G-Bane or V-Gaze or whatever you're using for whatever fight you're running. Smite, I'm only putting it here because of the amount of effort and skill that was displayed in the Smite kills. There was a Smite tier 2 Rathma kill posted. Smite can also do Lucian as well. I've tried the Lucian kill and I actually couldn't do the tier 2 yet, but I've attempted it a little bit. And the Rathma kill, I haven't done a tier 2 kill on Rathma with Smite offline. But I just thought it was so admirable that somebody did do it. I didn't see a Declone kill yet. There might have been one posted and I missed it. And I haven't tested a tier 2 Declone yet as well. So I put a question mark here whether it can do it. In terms of difficulty, this is a very hard build to play. It's not easy to run. And again, this is for people who want a big challenge for themselves, not for the inexperienced for sure. Minimum gear costs, I put in a question mark because I actually really don't know. I don't want to speculate on this even because I genuinely don't know what would be the minimum gear cost for this. It's not even saying that they're high. It uses gear that isn't like necessarily the normal gear. So again, I don't want to speculate too much. Zeal is pretty solid. It's kind of like the opposite of a charge. While in Declone, Rathma deal is a little bit worse. And Lucian deal is a little bit better and deals a little bit more damage, mostly due to its splash. It is solid. It's slightly less safe because the animation of Zeal locks you in place a little bit more, while Fizz Charge lets you move as you do damage. So again, a little bit worse, but otherwise a pretty solid build for running tier 2s. Holy Bolt, I have done the Declone kill, I have done the Lucian kill, I haven't done a Rathma kill, and I don't know if anybody ever has done Rathma kill on Holy Bolt. I'm hoping to do this in season 12. This will be one of my goals for season 12. I'm going to try and make this happen. I don't promise anything. If I do, hopefully I can get some video guides and demonstration for you guys to have. The gear costs, the speculative gear costs that I've theory crafted are pretty low, so I think it would be cool if this build can actually do it. So I'll let you guys know if we manage to make it happen or not. Next class is Barb. Again, put a note in. There we go. And maybe I'll get water real quick before I start Barb. So give me one moment. Okay, we are back, and I got some water, so now I feel a little bit better. Barb, we're kind of halfway, so that's pretty nice. Barb leveling, again, I hear this a lot from Barb players. They have different strategies of leveling. I'm not saying their strategies are bad and mine are better. These are just the ones I prefer. I know people sometimes use Whirlwind or Throw. I just like Warcry and Double Swing. So everybody do whatever they like. If you already have a way to level, you don't need a guide. You're fine. Either way, for leveling, the recommended path for me is starting with a Frenzy and Double Swing and going into either Warcry or going with Frenzy and Double Swing all the way. This will mostly depend on your drops. Barb is a very drop dependent kind of runner in my experience. And if you find good weapons for Double Swing, then you can go Double Swing. If you find an insane throwing weapon, you can go Throw as well if you want. For the most part, you can either go with this, so you save your respecs, or you go with Frenzy into Warcry. This can also easily farm early on and do pretty well for you. I used either a Act 4 Dark Merc for the Amp, or you can use Act 2 Defiance Merc with an Insight to just kind of tank for you, and he will do pretty well. The same setups kind of works for the Frenzy Double Throw. I really like the Act 5 Might Merc for the Frenzy and Double Swing. Sorry, not Double Throw. Again, up to preference. The speed on this one was a little slower compared to Warcry on my runs. This is one of the builds that I've had the least amount of runs on, because I think I've only done 3 on this one. I think, right, I think I've only done 3 runs with this overall. So again, one of the builds that I had less runs on, but is still something, hopefully, and still reliable. Otherwise, safety, A for Warcry, incredibly tanky. Very, very strong, and you get very big, beefy bows. Frenzy Double Swing, while you are still tanky, you are melee. You have to run around and hit stuff, so do keep that in mind for safety. The gear you need, you're looking for either all skills and faster cast rate on Frenzy, so whether it's Spirits, Memory, Rune Ward is pretty nice, or you can get all sorts of other things like Lore, Stealth, things like that. Or for a Double Swing, you're looking for good weapons, Lawbringer, Honor, Unbending Will, things like that could be helpful early on. For this build, if you manage to find a Mal Rune, you can also make an Oath, but not necessary. 2 Unbending Wills or Lawbringer plus Unbending Will seem to do pretty good. For early farming and what you farm on a pretty low budget before you get anything big, we had Throw, Warcry, Berserk, and D-Swing. Berserk and or D-Swing, these two I kind of put together because they work very similarly. And you have Whirlwind as well, with the bleed aspect of it. I think the physical Whirlwind didn't do that well early on for me, so I'll only keep bleed here. Throw, again, I list kind of like areas you can farm. Throw is pretty flexible, can do a lot of different things. It is pretty solid, but you do need to get these good weapons early on. If you don't have them, it doesn't work, so it just depends on your drops. Again, if you find like a nice lacerator and maybe craft something nice, then you'll be fine. But if you don't, then maybe it wouldn't feel that good. Versatility A can do a lot of different things, just need the weapons. Safety B, you attack from afar, but you are pretty fragile. I went with like a lot of dexterity there, trying to max the damage so you can actually farm relatively fast. Again, you can lose some speed in your clear, but otherwise it will be pretty bad. Next one is Warcry. When I farm a Warcry, I just kind of stay in Trav. You can do keys with this, and you can do a lot of different things. So I'm not saying it's bad at doing other things necessarily. It's just that if you're not doing Trav, it feels like it's pretty much wasting your time as Warcry, walking around to other places, or jumping or teleporting with Telestick, and then wasting your gold on fixing it instead of just running Trav, making gold, and gambling items. That's the strategy I would use as a Warcry Barb. That's what I've done when I did SSF runs with Warcry in the past, and that's why I generally recommend. Again, Act 2 Defiance or Act 4 Dark Merc normally is what I run on it. Just up to you. And safety A, you're incredibly tanky. You usually are fine. Versatility, I again just keep him to Trav, which can be boring for some people. Speed B, he doesn't farm them too fast, and you also have like this find item extra step that you can do. But otherwise, he's pretty nice. And Berserk D-Swing, we ran Chaos Sanctuary and Keys with this. It's Berserk or D-Swing, by the way, not Berserk and D-Swing. They both play similarly and use very similar items overall, so I just lumped them together. I've done the Berserk run with the GSF, and I've done D-Swing early farming by myself, and I demonstrated also in the closed beta. Both of them are good. Both can do like these kind of early farming stuff. It feels like the early bossing should have been before this for a moment, but maybe I'm just starting to forget stuff halfway through recording this. Yeah, otherwise speed was pretty slow. You are an Earthwalker build. Versatility was fine. There are a few areas you can farm, and safety was fine as well. But you are still a melee build. For Whirlwind Bleed, once you get like your bleed items, maybe a bleed belt crafted, and maybe a few bleed jewels, or just your open wounds close to 100, or to get them to 100, you can farm all these things. It's one of the first builds to go into early maps and do pretty well there. You can do Chaos pretty well. Cows felt pretty fine for me. And all of them do kind of okay. I like the Act 5 offensive, the Act 5 Might Merc, or you can run Act 2 offensive. I don't know if other mercs are being run with this. I know a lot of people recommend Act 1 Vigor. I'm a big hater of the Act 1 Vigor merc. If I can avoid her, I do. And I like these two mercs a little bit more because she just kept dying early on. So I didn't like that too much. Versatility, it can actually do quite a bit. And the fact that it can go into early maps is pretty good already. And in terms of speed, it was doing pretty well. But again, it will heavily depend on the weapons you find early on. So again, leaving it a little bit in the average category in how fast it farms. For early bossing, I have here 3 options: Berserk, D-Swing, and Throw. Berserk and D-Swing are pretty similar. Berserk did a little bit better in Ubers on like average. D-Swing was slightly behind it, just so it deals slightly less damage. Declone Berserk is very, very nice for early declone on Barb. It does require a little bit of gear. You do want to get like some PDR compared to D-Swing, because you are lowering your PDR. So that's kind of important to remember. Difficulty otherwise was easy. Just a right-click build where you taunt your skeletons and make sure they deal less damage to you. Overall, pretty safe, pretty nice. Just melee builds, so they get B for safety, because Ubers can pop you a little bit, so it is a little dangerous. D-Swing similar, but slightly worse than Berserk in my experience. And otherwise pretty similar. Again, the gear requirements are lower because you don't need as much PDR, because you're not lowering your own PDR. And for Throw was very similar in terms of difficulty in Declone early on. You just need that good weapon. If you find it, you're good. If you don't, then it's probably a skip. Otherwise, very safe build because you're attacking from afar, and dealing with skeletons and all that was pretty easy. So again, difficulty medium, just because you need to keep up your frenzy, but also kiting everything. And yeah, it can get a little bit confusing to newer players, but otherwise it's okay. Gear requirements medium, just because you need these weapons that are not necessarily easily attainable in early bossing. So get some medium for gear requirements. Sorry, cheap mappers. Okay, so again, just because something is not here doesn't mean it's bad. It just shows a few things that I did manage to look into. Didn't manage to get a good look at everything. I know there are more options, just what we ended up testing. For Whirlwind Fizz, we tried Act 1 Vigor, Act 2 Offensive, Act 5 Might. I like the Act 5 Might the most out of these, but Act 2 Offensive was also okay. Safety, it's fine. You are a melee build that relies on leech, but you also don't get access to potions while you're spinning, so you gotta be careful. Safety wise, you do get Iron Skin maxed, but still that's not perfect. So again, the things you're looking for are big weapons, crafted or unique, plus Fortitude and Veil of Steel. That's kind of like the classic early setup for the physical builds that I was trying. I was trying this with a lot of different builds. You can run other stuff. Halberds was recently nerfed. Not super significantly, but was nerfed. I like Veil of Steel anyway because it gives us resistances, making it a little bit easier to cap. That was also nerfed recently. So again, not a huge nerf, just a 10% ED nerf. So again, I think I'll be fine. And you can get like a non-F grandfather or something early on for pretty cheap, and maybe match it with a non-F Schaefer's, or you can invest in like crafted weapons or like a two-handed crafted weapons. There's a lot of different options for a Whirlwind. It's pretty flexible with what gear you're going to get. Just make sure you get good weapons if you can, to make your Whirlwind as effective as possible. Whirlwind Bleed with a little bit of gear already was doing pretty well in maps. Got an A tier rank despite being an Earthwalker or a Spinner. I guess a little Beyblade going around. It was definitely clearing a lot better, and with the Act 1 Vigor, it managed to do the best despite my hatred for her. She's the one that performed the best, so I have to say it. So A for speed was going pretty fast. Safety, very similar to Whirlwind Fizz. Otherwise, Zerk and Double Swing, they did fine for safety. They were pretty safe. It's just like a walker build. Again, pretty fine. Speed is not too fast, but if you are doing bosses, you can map with this on the side. Again, you'll be looking for your big weapons. Fortitude, Veil of Steel. If you'd like, you can use these also in early bossing as well, if you'd like. If you'd like more tanky options to use in bossing, like Vampire Gaze or maybe Verdungos, you can always buy those as well. Or instead of using a Fortitude, you can buy yourself a crafted PDR armor. All sorts of different options exist. It was starting to do a lot better once you get like either runewords or crafted throw weapons, that kind of like mid-tier crafted throw weapons. I wanted to do a demonstration with the wind runeword, but sadly it was bugged till the last day of the beta, I think. So I didn't manage to get the time to actually do like a demonstration with it or like a recording with it. But I have tested it in the past in season 11 and it does pretty well on a budget. So again, wind runeword or a crafted weapon, lacerator, that's kind of the things that you're looking for there. Fortitude, Veil of Steel, that's what we ran for this, and it did very, very well. Otherwise, you would just want things for physical builds, of course. So if you can get things like, I use an Act 5 Merc, so giving him like some plus skills for his aura is good. Getting like a beast is good if you can, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It just depends on how much budget you got going. So I guess that's just how it is. For endgame mappers, we have quite a few builds. As you can see, a lot of whirlwinds over here. So we have the whirlwind physical, and for some of the builds, I had to consider in mind that some levels of gear costs are unrealistic to even place here. So if we're talking builds that exceed like the 100 high runes in order to make the build look good or look insane, then usually I try to refrain from including these things. I just wanted to put it here because I have managed to bring Whirlwind Fizz to sub 5 minutes like on the live version, but again, that's not something that's realistic for most people to do on the live version, so I left it in the A category for speed. Whirlwind Bleed, doing pretty well. Again, super strong build, one of the faster mappers for the Barb class. Safety is in B. Again, I feel like I put safety in B mostly because I invest a lot in strength for extra damage. So the health pool is a lot lower than it normally would be. In addition to that, it's a whirlwind build, so you cannot rejuve as you're spinning. So if you run into either immunes or if you run into like a big pack and you're not careful, you will get popped. The gear costs are lower than Whirlwind Fizz and it's faster in speed, so it's something to keep in mind if you do want to just optimize for that. Whirlwind Bleed is definitely the way to go. Whirlwind Fire was tested mostly because I had feared that the splash damage changes will negatively affect it. It seems to be retaining its speed, still a very fast one. It will probably still be very good in player 8 and also in solo. Again, very consistent mapper. Gear costs are pretty high, but otherwise very strong. Whirlwind proc, we tested a Whirlwind proc for cold in season 12 because of the change to Blizzard with Nor Tenderizers that cast Blizzard on striking. I've tested in the past like a Whirlwind Magic. It was back when I was a lot less experienced, a lot less informed about the game, but I didn't make a guide for it at the time. So I linked that guide. I will link the cold proc build that we tested in hopefully whenever it's uploaded. They both are relatively low to medium kind of builds. The Whirlwind proc builds in general, they're not too expensive in my opinion. Like they can be, but they're not super expensive. Their speed is not too impressive. I haven't managed to see anyone of them do super fast, but otherwise they're fine. Safety wise, they're also kind of just okay. The Whirlwind builds without too much health, but also too much sustain. Next is Throw, and Throw is, next is Warcry. Sorry, I just skipped Warcry almost. Warcry is a great build, very nice for speed and for safety. You're incredibly tanky, pretty much unkillable. You could go max block if you want, and you can clear maps in about 5 minutes if you go very fast with it. Your most limiting factor is your Enigma most of the time. That just runs out of charges. That doesn't mean Enigma needs to be buffed, because Enigma is incredibly powerful. I just wanted to slide that in here. Gear costs are medium. In my opinion, you can get most of the gear relatively cheaply, and it's not too demanding compared to like elemental builds that buy a ton of facets. You don't really have to do that. Otherwise, very strong build. Throw Fizz. This was my favorite build to play in Season 12, and I think if I make a Barb, I would definitely make this one, but I don't think I'm making a Barb in Season 12. The changes to Throw were really good. I played this build with an Enigma, which gives it great mobility as well, and like even better mobility, and I clear maps with it consistently in under 5 minutes. Absolute tier 3 maps, of course. Safety, again, I play very aggressively, so safety is a little lower. Your HP pool is a bit lower as well. But I never really died playing this build in tier 3, so as far as I know, it's fine. Proc Leap, I've tested a bunch of those during the beta, and I didn't like any of them. I included it here just because I might still upload a guide for them, because I know people have asked for me to do one. I don't know how good these can be. We tried the Lightning version with Stormspire. We tried a Cold version with the new Blizzard buffs with North Tenderizer. We tried I'm trying to remember, there was another one that we tried that I'm probably forgetting right now with Destruction, I think, in the past, in like Season 11. So again, we've tried a bunch of these. None of them felt that good, and I wasn't very happy with them. And Safety also didn't feel that good because Sustain wasn't too consistent. So again, I didn't love them. They weren't too fast, and I don't super recommend them. But I did include them because a lot of people asked about them. And lastly, D-Swing and Zerk. If you are a bosser and you want a map on the side, you're an F-Walker build, very similar to the other F-Walkers. You don't clear too fast, the gear costs are not too high, and the safety is pretty solid. Next, we got the bossing category, and I got 3 builds here for the Bar Bosser. All of these I've tried to some extent. I haven't done tier 2s on all of them. I haven't done all tier 2s on all of them, but Berserk I've done already everything in Season 11. I've done it on a GSF with pretty low budget gear. So again, fairly safe, very consistent. Difficulty was very easy. First try easy kind of build on my experience. Feels very similar to other physical builds. If you have experience on other physical builds, this should feel pretty simple to you as well. Safety wise, it gets an A, mostly because of the Berserk lowering your PDR, which can be a little dicey sometimes, especially in Rathma, actually not in Declone. In Declone it's pretty easy to overcap, but in Rathma you don't really overcap your PDR, and the Purple Knight can be a little scary there, so make sure you kill him first. Throw, in Declone, Throw seems to be the best Barb build. Seems a little bit better than Berserk, but both of them are really strong. Both of them felt very consistent. In Rathma, I actually have managed to get this skill on offline with somebody else's character that they did already Rathma on. The kill is a little bit slow, or at least it was slow for me. It was a little bit hard to finish the fight also, because the last portion of the fight was just really slow because there's no bounces if you kill one of the 2 bosses earlier. So again, just keep that in mind. Definitely capable of doing all tier 2 bosses. Lucian had a similar problem. When it's just Lucian, the damage is very low, so just keep those things in mind. Otherwise, the fight wasn't hard, just a little bit slow in some portions of it, and it was very safe. Attack from afar and deal a lot of damage. Min gear costs are medium, even though this could go pretty high with crafted weapons. They could become really expensive early on. It shouldn't be much more than a Berserk Barb. And lastly, we have Wolf Barb, which I have done Rathma on, and I have done Lucian on. I haven't done Declone, but I don't think that's the hardest fight necessarily for it. So from my impressions, I've done a tier 1 on it, and my impressions from the tier 2 are that it's around a B tier. I think Wolf Barb is pretty strong. I don't think it's weak or anything. I don't know if there is, what's the general consensus on Wolf Barb. It seems like around the level of a Fury to me. Once you get like your totem up and running in terms of damage, they both seem to be doing pretty okay overall. I think it's slightly worse than Rathma, but otherwise, and in Lucian again, just because the damage on Fury is a little higher normally. But free FPA Wolf Barb with an Odium is pretty solid. Otherwise, the gear costs are not too high, because a lot of the gear is not contested. The Wolf Howl, and what's it called, the Odiums are not used much by anybody else. So again, not too expensive, pretty solid. And maybe there are other ways that you can make this build even cheaper for tier 2s. I don't really know. I haven't seen anything other than that. But yeah, difficulty easy, just a right-click build with an extra totem for attack rating and damage. So again, pretty solid. Alright, we go to the next class, which is the Necro class. Let me again put a note in my little note here, notebook. There we go. Alright, the Necro class, the 5th class for today. We got Poison Strike for normal and Clay Golems and Revives for Nightmare and Hell. This is how I like to level. I know there are other options. I know some people use Thief. I actually wanted to test Thief for leveling now with the changes to mana cost. I think this might be a viable alternative over here. I just haven't got the time to test it, so that's why it's not here. But I do think it's going to be added here in the future. Hopefully I have time for that in Season 12. Again, I only needed Smoke and Lore. Whenever I make this build, that's all I really get. And you can get yourself an Insight. Maybe I should have written this here. You can get yourself an Insight if you want, or a Memory, but you don't really have mana issues on this build, so you'll be fine. Speed and B, on average, this build was usually slower than other builds for me while running through the campaign. Safety-wise, in A, the Clay Golems and Revives pretty much do their job and keep you safe and keep the Merc safe. For early farming, the 2 builds that I looked into were Clay Golems and Revives and Thief. If you're running Clay Golems and Revives, killing Act bosses and key bosses is pretty consistent. I like farming Trav with it, and Corrupted Zones are pretty worth it if you have like the right Revives. With this build, after I go to Trav, usually I always start with Trav. I revive some council members. I try to stay in the game till the Revives die. So it's better to stay in the game and farm a lot of different areas rather than farming one and resetting every time. That's my personal approach, at least. Thief, I farmed mostly in Chaos and Trav. That was the most effective. We managed to get very fast clears with Thief, and the new wand crafts now for Thief are incredibly powerful and very recommended to play around with. Again, even shopped wands for Thief can be very, very strong, now rolling magic damage as well. Act for Light Merc or Act for Dark Merc, this for Amp and this for the Sanctuary Aura. Safety a little lower on Thief just because you don't have your summons, and versatility slightly lower than this one. It felt like Clay Golems and Revives can do a bit more, but it farmed a little bit faster and more efficiently. Both are strong. This uses a respec the Thief because this is what I recommend leveling with, so just keep that in mind. Yeah, let's move to the next category, which is early bossing. And here we have 3 builds. We have the Golem and the Golem builds for Blood and Fire. And this one is the general way that I recommend killing Ubers with. Hopefully I have the demonstration here up before long. I didn't love it for Ubers, but for Declone, this is one of the better Declone and safer Declone kills that we've done. The only reason it loses points for safety is because early on it will have very low HP, so for people who aren't used to this, they might get popped a little bit by this build, but otherwise the difficulty was very easy. Just used an edge bow, extremely cheap, extremely nice to do. Hopefully I have the demo here as soon as possible. Boner Necro, for Ubers it feels fine with the budget gear, and Declone it feels again just okay. Safety wise a little bit lower just because you don't have the summons to kind of tank for you as much as you do normally with the other summon builds. And gear requirements are high because they require a lot more plus skills compared to these two. For Clay Golems and Revives, this is one of the better Uber killers early on, but the Revives are not that useful in Declone. So again, kind of like a problem that this one had in the opposite direction, this one has here. So again, amazing for Ubers, but worse for Declone. Safety, again, very similar. You have your summons that are very, very nice and they tank for you, but make sure you keep them all up because you are pretty fragile without them. Difficulty, in my opinion, again, very easy for the Ubers and doesn't require a lot of gear. For cheap mappers, I got 3 options here: Boner, Dark Pact, and Summoner. There are, again, more, but these are the ones that we managed to look into, and enough test runs for me to feel like I can post them here. Boner, safety was B. It's before you get all your summons, all your plus skills, and everything feels pretty good yet. So your your extra golem isn't really doing anything, and you don't have like a tanky merc who can do everything you need from it. Speed wise, it was very, very fast. Managed to get very consistent fast tier 2s and tier 1s. Being able to step into tier 2s early is one of the big benefits of playing Boner early on. Use pretty cheap gear, can use like magic LCs, can use skillers. So again, pretty flexible. Bone Shades are not very expensive. 5 thief heads are not very expensive early on. You can even find 220 necro circlets for pretty cheap. And the biggest expense you get here are the skull rings, which you can get last if you don't want to focus on them early on. But you can get this build up and running pretty fast, and it will do pretty well. Dark Pact, again, a build that is an off-meta build. Not a lot of people play this. I think it's an amazing build. I love it personally. And we got here safety at A because we are huge to Decrepify and huge weekend levels. Most monsters barely scratch you. Speed was A. We didn't manage to keep up with Boner in terms of speed, but it was very fast overall. And again, gear extremely cheap because it's mostly uncontested. DFS and BHK, not many people use them, so again, normally are pretty cheap. And we got the Summoner, just like an Act 5 or an Act 1 Fizzmerk. I don't know why there's no... Yeah, there should be like a little slash over there saying Act 5 or Act 1 Fizzmerk. You can run both of them are okay. It just depends on your setup. I like the Demon Machine and Beast setup, so I guess this should just say Act 1 Fizzmerk instead. I don't know why this is confusing me so much. So again, safety pretty solid. You have your summons kind of tanking for you, and your speed till you get your Phoenix Rune Ward. You will have to drink quite a few potions, but once you get it, you'll be fine. But just farming with the Beast Rune Ward and Demon Machine does pretty well. And then you can get your Templars, even if you buy a bad Templars early on, and then get your Phoenix as well, and you should be fine. There is a version of this with mages as well early on, instead of relying on the physical aspect, which you can definitely go with. I didn't have the time to look into it, so it's not on this tier list. For endgame mappers, I found 7 builds, or I say I found, I didn't find them. I found these 7 builds to be the endgame mappers for the Necro class. It felt like Necro has the least amount of endgame mappers. I wonder if that is really the case, or if that was just my perspective. So we got Boner, of course, which with the reduced mana cost feels like is not a nightmare to get sustained for once you lose your Insight Merc, which usually you would like to do. I was trying the Act 4 Light Merc. I also ran this with an Act 2 Defiance Merc, but I like the Light Merc overall more. So again, you can do whatever you like. I ended up liking the Act 4 Light Merc. Safety B, again, you don't have as many bodies tanking for you, and your Light Merc is also not quite tank. But speed-wise, it did manage to keep up almost with the S tier builds, being a pretty solid mapper overall. Gear cost is pretty low, and again, I put it at medium, mostly because it requires some big +6, +7 crafts, hopefully, with good options on them, so they can get expensive. But otherwise, pretty niche off-meta gear that is not the most contested, and usually sold for cheaper than it's worth on Trade Ladder. For the next one, we got Corpse Explosion. It had its line of sight requirement removed. It was added in Season 11 before I didn't have it, so it's basically returning to its former glory. The line of sight thing just made it sometimes a little awkward to cast in some situations, slowing the build down. Otherwise, it's an S tier build, clears map super fast, very strong, very capable and reliable. I give it high gear costs, mostly because you're getting very expensive pieces and you're putting fire facets in them. You have and I used mostly an Act 2 Defiance Merc. I didn't like the Dark Merc as much, and you're giving him like an Innocence, Ferocity, and an Infinity. So again, quite a few rune words, quite a few facets, quite a few expensive gear pieces. And I think in Season 12 you'll have interesting crafted ones for it as well, with like +6 or +7 to Corpse Explosion with extra fire damage, and some good FCR. I think that would be pretty impressive once you get these ones crafted, and you can make some pretty spicy stuff with it. Dark Pact in safety gets an S for me. This is a build I used to play again in Season 10. And I used to lead player 8s with this. I would jump ahead of the group in players 8, and I would never die with this pretty much. You have a super tanky bone armor on top of like a very solid lineup of revives with you, normally that come up from your DFS. You just have a lot of quality of life lowering enemy attack with both Weaken and Decrepify, and overall a very solid tanky build. If you run this with an Act 1 Fizz for the Curse or Act 4 Light, then you'll be slightly less tanky. But if you get yourself an active Defiance Merc, you can even telestomp with him, and you'll be super strong. It's just up to you what you like the most. I like the X4 Light the most right now in its current iteration. That's the one I like the most for the aura and reducing the enemy resistance to magic. The gear costs are overall low because the gear is not very contested. Not many people play this build, and we managed to get sub 6-minute maps very consistently on this build. Next one is Fire Golem. This is one of the faster builds in the game. Again, it's an S tier, only kind of second to a few S plus tier mappers. Generally speaking, this build can do insanely well in tier 1s and tier 2s. Some of the faster ones, maybe some of the fastest tier 1 and tier 2 mappers. In tier 3s, it can keep up with the speed. It does require a little bit of pre-buffing. Normally, at least like 1 or 2 pieces of pre-buffing. And you also kind of rely on the tick damage from the Fire Golems. So it does have a kind of rhythm to it, which other builds don't have to abide by, like Poison Strike and Poison Nova. Again, I haven't seen the sub 4-minute tier 3 clears that include pre-buffing and removing and re-putting your gear at the end. Like, I haven't seen these videos. If they exist, I mean, I'd love to see them. I've watched some people stream this build before, and I heard quite a few people are going to do this build in Season 12, so I'm looking forward to see this. Otherwise, a very strong and powerful build, extremely expensive, and can get very competitive both with the facets and with the gear for the pre-buffing especially. So again, very expensive build, still very fast one. Requires very low engagement because you're just kind of hopping from pack to pack and not really doing too much. You have some time to loot in between. But from my testing and comparison, both on the live and the beta version, it was slightly slower than the last 2 builds, which are Poison Nova and Poison Strike. These builds are, in my opinion, the 2 fastest mappers in the game. I've ran Poison Nova in Season 12, doing sub 3-minute tier 2s, but also sub 4-minute consistent tier 3s. This is one of the fastest builds in the game, and the only problem with it is the safety, obviously. Before you get like the insane GG Omega gear, you will die if you play as aggressive as the build kind of wants you to play. So that is just something to keep in mind. This is with all the nerfs that it got, with the LC nerfs and the damage nerfs that it got in the past. Still incredibly powerful. And I don't know, this build is just very good. It just takes sometimes to make it this viable, because you do want to be able to one-shot every pack that you're hitting with your Poison Nova. Until then, it doesn't feel as good. So it takes a lot of time to build. Incredibly high cost, as again, very similar to Fire Golem, where before you get that insane investment, it doesn't do as good as it should do. But once you do get there, it's insane. For Poison Strike, I would say it's almost the same, but it's safer. It's more consistent in tier 3s, even if it's a little slower in tier 1s and tier 2s. And the gear costs are medium, because it uses a lot of things that are just not as expensive, like Martyrdom with free poison facets and Andes with free poison facets. Using Innocence instead of like a very expensive 2-skill free socket armor like Carapace or Arcanes with facets, or again, just rolling an Innocence is cheaper normally. And just yeah, it's just really not that expensive for what it does. This is the fastest mapper in tier 3s. Sorry, Poison Strike is the fastest mapper in tier 3s in my opinion. I haven't seen anyone come close to the consistency. The only downside of safety that it has with its automatic recast of Bone Armor is the fact that sometimes you lose the lottery or win the lottery and you don't have your Bone Armor recasted, and you might just poof. It's kind of dangerous in HC, but it is still runnable in HC from what I know. I've seen people run it in HC and do fine with it. Alright, for tier 2 bossing, last category for Necro, and then we have 2 more classes left. We're doing good, hopefully. We can get this under 2.5 hours. So tier 2 bossing, we have Desecrate, Poison Strike, and Blood Golems. Blood Golems I only ever seen done in Declone. I haven't managed to get the Declone tier 2 kill yet. I've done the tier 1 with it. It doesn't seem super hard. It's just something that you kind of have to get used to. It's a summoner build, and again, does pretty well. Tracks from the early bossing as well. Then you have Desecrate, which is the build that I've done last season. I should add the links for it. I just haven't had the time to do it yet. So again, I've done these kills on ladder with my Poison Necro before. Again, it's pretty solid for them. They're not super difficult once you get the fight down. They're not like Sorc level of difficulty, but they are fairly challenging and they are fairly hard to do. The gear cost can be a little high because the weapons are expensive. You need a lot of facets, and a lot of gear that is fairly high tuned with a lot of jaw runes. So in order to do it, because otherwise your health pool is just very small. But otherwise, difficulty is medium because you just cast your Desecrates and try to keep your revives up to tank for you. Poison Strike I found a little bit more challenging. I've only managed to do the Lucian kill so far. I haven't done Declone or Raphma on Poison Strike yet in tier 2s. I will try to do it in the future, but I just haven't managed to do it yet. If you want to have good examples, I wanted to have Kirin's links here, because he is absolutely a master of this. Difficulty, in my opinion, is hard just because you're a melee, fragile character. Even though your damage is insanely high, the min gear costs are actually pretty low for this build, which is kind of surprising. But again, that's just how Poison Strike is sometimes. All the stuff are cheaper than you'd expect them to be. And Blood Golems, again, medium, not as expensive, can do it with an Obsession Rune Word, or can do it with other options like Bone Flame and a nice stick. But I've only ever seen it done in Declone. I have not seen Raphma or Lucian kills on it at all. I don't know. I've seen some people say that it's a good killer for this, both on the Discord and in other tier lists. I just haven't seen this ever, so I can't comment on it, so I will not personally. If you want a good demonstration here, I will have a Woogs run with Blood Golems and Declone, because he is... for me, he's like the master of bossing. I learned a lot from him. I think he has a lot to teach, even if he's not making a lot of videos. He is a very informed individual and very reliable person for information. All right, let's go to the next class. That is the Assassin class. And for the leveling paths, generally I have two options here. These are the ones I had the time to test. I know that you can level other stuff as well. I keep saying this every time, but yeah, just remember that when you're watching. Blade Sentinel for normal is what I like the most, and then swap to Lightning Traps for Nightmare and Hell. Very, very solid leveling build. Very, very fast. This is one of the builds that, like, even without any experience on Assassin, I was doing already immediately very good on it. It feels very natural. It feels very easy to run. It is fairly safe as well. And it uses rune words like Insights, Lore, and you want to kind of buy plus to Light Sentry Claws. You can buy them from Anya, and they're going to do pretty well for you. And the second path is going with Psychic Hammer early, just to level up, and then once you get Mind Blast, you can start running Mind Blast. This uses no respecs, so for some people who like leveling just one build, this is a pretty solid one. This build usually picks up more towards Hell, rather than in like late Nightmare and Hell. Once you can actually max your Mind Blast around level 40 something, like 45 is it? Try to remember now. Or so. Once you actually max it, it feels a lot better, and then you start clearing stuff pretty well. Is a little bit slower than this up, but is very, very safe. You run a very juiced up fade, and you can get Lore, Insight, and Mind Blast Flaws to go through the campaign relatively easy. It's also a good farming build later on, so of course it does have its virtues here. For early farming, these three options are the ones I recommend the most. We got Wake of Fire, Light Traps, and Mind Blast. Light Traps sits in Arcane. Mind Blast can sit in Chaos Sanctuary. Can do a lot of other things, but I found it best for it to sit in Chaos Sanctuary. And for Wake of Fire, farming cows or farming early maps felt okay. Generally speaking, these are the mercs. In terms of safety, I found Mind Blast to be the safest just because of the insanely good fade. I ran a burst of speed on these two, so I can lay traps fast enough for it to not feel like a slow farmer. In terms of speed, that's what it felt like. Again, based on the timings that we had, Mind Blast had a consistent clear time for for Chaos Sanctuary. Light Traps with a pretty solid farming time in Arcane Sanctuary. Very, very fast, and the Lightning Traps kind of let you loot while you kill stuff. And yeah, overall, pretty solid early farming. All of them just kind of sit in their good areas and farm till they find whatever they need, or things that they can trade away. For early bossing, we have quite a few options. We have Blade Sentinel. I personally never succeeded much with this build in early bossing, not in Ubers and in Declone. Again, could be a skill issue on my end, as I am not super experienced with it. I know that a lot of speedrunners used to love this build. It did get nerfed, so I'm putting a speculation lower rank than I did before on it. We only tested this once in the closed beta, so again, not very in-depth testing for it post-nerf. I have tested it a lot in the past, and I was never a big fan of it on a budget. Then we have light traps for Ubers and declone. Again, I like this build a little bit more. Safety-wise, it is safer. So just lay your traps and you can run around. I use this with shockweb and lightning traps. Some people just use lightning traps. Shockweb felt a little bit easier to lower declone health for me. So overall, I like it. This difficulty-wise, all these are relatively easy. And the gear cost for this one seems lower because I didn't really need any claws for damage for this one. Mind Blast, personally my favorite to do Ubers with early on, but I've already suggested this to a bunch of people and I got feedback saying that they did struggle with it, so I don't know if it's like my personal bias towards Mind Blast. I personally find it really easy. It's also very safe because you get a very good fade, of course, which is another benefit of Mind Blast. You have your summons to tank for you, so overall very, very nice. For declone, you do need a little bit more gear to clear it very consistently, so it gets a C rank in the early declone category. Again, a little bit of a struggle there otherwise, and you're locked into place with your animation, so it can be a little bit dangerous before you get enough life. Gear requirements, just medium, before you can find like a few plus skills to make your Mind Blast look good and to make your warriors not insta die. Otherwise, easy to maneuver for me in the declone and Ubers fight. Fire traps, this seems to be like this will be the go-to option for early assassins to me in the current form. I feel like it's definitely more strong than light traps if we talk just from the trap skill tree, and for me much more than Blade Sentinel for sure. Difficulty very easy, just lay down your traps. Wake of Fire for the skeletons and Inferno for the declone phases. Same with the Ubers, can deal with the ads pretty well. The Wake of Inferno is pretty good at dealing with the Ubers. Gear costs are pretty low. You can do this fresh off the campaign with some sharp claws and everything else being pretty basic. And lastly, I had a question mark here. This is something that I read into from the Discord, and I've seen some demonstration from the Discord discussion for the Assassin. Sadly, I didn't get enough time to test this myself, so I just put a little asterisk there. Seems good, require more testing, might edit in the future. Asking on the same discussion channel on Discord is recommended if interested. They seem to have good information about this, and some people who are more experienced than me with Blade Sentinel were testing it. I'm still tracking to see what they have to say, and like asking people personally to make sure that I get like good information on this. I don't want to post anything before I actually know, and I'll try to edit this in the future as fast as possible whenever I do have more information. For cheap mappers, let me get a sip of water before I say that. All right, for cheap mappers, I took Mind Blast, Wake of Fire, Blade Dance. This is the Spin-Sin Poison version, Fist of Fire, and Blade Fury. You can include the other martial arts builds. Fist of Fire seemed to me like the one that worked the best in a budget scenario. So that's just kind of what we went with. So yeah, we got Mind Blast, A, possibly S. We had like mostly sustain issues during the beta because we couldn't get like life or mana after each skill slams or anything like that early on, or like find like the things that we wanted in the slams to just make this work and be fixed. So we ran it with Skillers, Mirages, or Shadow Killers. I tried both were good. Arax and Shadow Dancers. The Merc was pretty much like an Insight Merc, so again, Insight Merc with Amp, not anything special there, not anything strong, not anything expensive either, just plain Mirages, plain Shadow Killers, and Arax and the Shadow Dancers. So relatively very cheap. I managed to push it pretty fast. If you put an Enigma on this, which would still be within the price range of the Infinity setups, like Traps is getting an Infinity, this seems to be an S tier budget build within the budget that I allow for, or for a cheap mapper, as I say. Again, I love this build. I played it in Season 11. I'm not repeating it only because I don't like repeating builds, generally speaking. So again, super strong build, super powerful. I recommend it to people who want to early farm. If you leveled with it, especially, super strong, just super good build. I love it. Wake of Fire seems very good. It mostly has a sustain issue early on. We got an Infinity and Skillers. This is before you get your Phoenix, which means you have to drink a lot of potions. This kind of slows down the build. Otherwise, it's fairly safe. It clears pretty well in the early maps and seems to be doing okay. I use an active defensive Merc just so he can tank for me a little bit. but didn't seem to change. Still needed quite a few potions, both for mana and for life. Blade Dance Spinson, this is like an S plus build in terms of speed, and it will kind of stick for the endgame mappers as well. Spinson is just very strong, only needs a Chaos Rune Ward and Natalia set and Shadow Discipline Skillers. You're pretty much good to go. Safety is A, has solid leech and does pretty well. And yeah, just an absolutely amazing build for early farming, one of the better ones for sure. I don't know if I had any other S plus builds in the early category, but this is definitely one of them. Clears even with the changes to Blade Dance, it seems to be doing just as fine. It's absolutely crazy build. Fist of Fire was S tier. We had an Infinity Skills and I put Akira's on them. You can try this just with Shopped Claws. That's what we did for Fist of Fire. No facets, no crazy stuff. You don't even need Mirages, even though I don't know how expensive they are plain, but you can just use shopped ones and you'll be okay. In this build, cleared absolutely crazy fast. The new buff to Dragonflight is crazy on this build and absolutely shatters maps at insane speed. Blade Fury is not dead, it's still here. I used an Act 2 offensive Merc for this test, but I think you can also run the Act 5 Merc, the Might Merc, and I think you'd be okay. I used a Reaper Stole, a Fortitude, and a G-Skull, and a bunch of Pierce items, because you do need 100% Pierce on this build now. It felt very strong with this very easy setup in mind. It still did 4-minute maps in tier 1s and managed to keep up in tier 2s as well. So again, very, very solid. The survivability and the damage are slower than they used to be. But again, it's still a very strong build. For endgame mappers, we have quite a diverse lineup here for the Sin. I couldn't include everything. Some things are not here, and I'll do my best to kind of go over it. Fist of Fire, this is in my opinion the fastest build and a very safe build as well to play. You have like your summons and your very tanky Act 2 Defiance Merc with an Infinity and Innocence Ferocity, just kind of tank for you even more. The reason why I consider this build the fastest is because we did consistent sub 4-minute maps in the beta when you're doing like speed runs for maps. Incredibly fast, incredibly capable. Even with looting, you can do 4 minutes with this, which is absolutely crazy. And it's very approachable to new players because regardless of whatever what's it called, charge you're on for Fist of Fire, all of them are very powerful. So you don't need to time your jumps. You don't need to be very, you can really AFK your brain and just like run this at super high speed. So it does let you focus on either looting or just doing whatever you want to do while mapping without being too intense. Gear costs are very high. Again, lots of fire facets, lots of expensive competitive gear. Blades of Ice, we didn't manage to quite make it all the way to S, but it did get a big improvement this season with big damage buffs. I couldn't get it consistent at sub 5, but it was still very, very strong, very safe, very good overall. Very similar playstyles. Generally, I think all the martial arts builds are relatively similar in that sense. All the non-kick martial arts builds, I should say. Falls of Thunder, pretty similar to Blades of Ice. It felt slightly faster, especially in the fortified maps. It did a little bit better than Blades of Ice, but otherwise you can run them both in whichever maps you would like. And they did pretty similarly, just lightning version, cold version. Blade Dance is the physical Blade Dance. I think some people claim this is an S tier build. I haven't personally seen it. Again, I'd love to see it. I haven't personally managed to get it there. It might require gear that I couldn't make in the beta. Maybe it needs very good crafted claws and I couldn't really get it. And I wouldn't test with an Aiden Scar because most players will never have access to an Aiden Scar. So I'd love to see it personally. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm told by several people whom I think are trustworthy that this build should be a sub 5 consistent tier 3 mapper. If you do have videos or recordings of this, you can post them and kind of link me to them. I'd love to see. I love to learn more things about this game. I just personally haven't seen it yet and haven't managed to do it personally. Otherwise, Mind Blast is a build that I ran solo to 99 last season. Basically, I did like 10 hours, 12 hours, 14-hour sessions sometimes of playing Mind Blast in a row, with most maps being sub 5 tier 3s. So I feel very confident that because it got buffed this season, it's going to stay in the S tier. For safety, it gets S. I ran this again solo to 99. Didn't have troubles with dying or anything like that. Just run. I like the Act 2 Defiance Merc. I know a lot of people like the Act 1 Fizz Merc with the Amp. You can run Act 4 Merc with the Amp. You You can run X3. It's very versatile. It has a lot of options. I like the Active Defiance because it's the safest one and didn't really slow me down in maps. So you can just do whatever you like, I guess. The buff that it got, by the way, is the mobility buff from Dragonflight because it has a lot of plus skills very naturally. It will have a maxed out Dragonflight with just 1 point most of the time. So again, that's pretty cool for the Mind Blast Assassin. And yeah, now we can go to Death Sentry. This one is a huge surprise to me. I expected, like going into this and starting exploring Death Sentry, I expected it to suck. It was very, very strong and it's far from sucking, and we had consistent sub 5-minute maps in the beta. I expect it to be even stronger in live version, especially in the sustain aspect. Of course, whenever I release this guide, I recommend watching it. I think it's one of the cooler builds that you can play. Death Sentry is definitely very strong. Multi-shot Venomson is one of the builds I played the most and enjoyed the most during the closed beta. Sadly, I think it's one of the builds that is going to be played the least out of this tier list, because I think it's a little bit of maybe too much of an off-meta type of approach. It uses the Widowmaker to do a multi-shot, and uses a lot of Shadow Skillers and plus the skills to cast a very strong Venom with the buffs to Venom, and it is very, very fun. It's one of my favorite mappers, and I managed to technically get it to sub 5 maps, but I've only done a few sub 5 maps with it, and I couldn't get it consistent yet. I was missing a lot of specific slams that you need for this build to work, like Pierce slams to get it to 100% Pierce. So again, I think it will be stronger in the live version, and if I do manage to build one in Season 12, I'll definitely update this if I can make it look better and make another guide or showcase for it. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till whenever I upload the link for it, because I really do think it's a cool build. Next one is Phoenix. I don't know why I didn't put it together with the other martial arts builds, maybe because I tested it a little bit later and did the session with it later. Again, just like the other martial arts builds, it's a little bit faster than Blaze of Ice and Claws of Thunder. Its main downside compared to Fists of Fire, in my experience, is that you have to be more aware of your charges, which will slow down most players who are not adept with this build. And again, it doesn't let you kind of turn your mind off and just focus on everything else. You do have to focus on these charges unless you have that rhythm already kind of down. Other than that, it felt like it kills bosses a little slower than Fists of Fire, and our average mapping time with it was around 4.5 minutes, which again is amazing. It's an S-tier build, super strong and super good. It is also very versatile in what maps it can run. If that's something you value, you would definitely like Phoenix. Kick is the next build. Kick runs fortified maps exclusively, so it was important for me to note it here. Safety wise, it's a melee build. It's not the tankiest build, but it's fairly solid. So I put it in A, but you are so strong with this build. You absolutely one-shot things in fortified maps, and we had consistent sub 5-minute maps on the Kick build. The buff to Dragonflight, which is of course a synergy and also a martial arts skill, so we'll be always at the minimum cooldown. So the buff to Dragonflight is super good on this build and gives it extra mobility to clear even faster than before. It was already strong, now it's even better, which is very cool. Blade Fury, again, we tested it in tier 3 maps, and while the safety did go down compared to last season, the speed was still solid. It wasn't as fast as last season, but it was still solid. 5 to 6 minute maps in, I tested it in Thrones, because I wanted to see if safety wise it does survive. It seems still strong. I think once you get now a very strong crafted weapon, you could definitely make this build go up to the S tier. But I couldn't manage to do that in the beta. But I think it does have the potential to climb back up there. It would just require a lot more gear than last season, which is a good thing because it's way too easy to make an insane build with this. I think now it's not going to carry as much in player as 8, and you do need that maximum Pierce now to make it look good. Lastly is Blade Dance Poison. It still managed to hang on from the budget gear. Gear costs are pretty medium. You just want a few more poison facets on top of the things here, and it still clears tier 3 maps really well. Again, I have not seen this build clear maps in sub 5-minute maps consistently, so I'd love to see that. If you do have footage of that, if you think that is something that is incorrect, I'd love to stand corrected. I just haven't seen that kind of footage before. I have asked for it in the past as well, and nobody managed to supply it, even though a lot of people who played it swore by that it definitely does do it. So yeah, this is just my perspective for now. And for tier 2 bossing, quite a few options here, but some of them I have less experience on, or they're not as good for other stuff. We got Blade Sentinel. This is, again, I put a little asterisk here. This is based on other runners' opinions and info. I have not personally tested this in tier 2s. So again, I asked free runners. I don't want to say their names because I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. But I've asked free runners who use Blade Sentinel. All three of them, I think, either got tier 2 auras or got tier 2 clears with this build on relatively low gear in the past. So they are pretty adept on these builds. And all of them kind of gave me the same answers, so it seems pretty consistent. She's still going to be solid in declone, but not as strong as she used to be. She used to be kind of like the best decloner overall, like especially early on, also in my opinion, but she might be a little bit worse now because of the damage nerfs, especially early on before you get your good crafted claws, because she's going to rely more on ED based weapons now, from what I understand. Like she's going to need to have better crafted claws for ED. For Rathma, I think before she wasn't the best Rathma runner in my experience. Like, I have done this tier 2 kill before. Like, I've done it only once offline with somebody else's character, but I have done it before, and I didn't think she was as good as Charge or as Zerk or as Maul in the past. So I think if she's nerfed in the damage department, it's definitely going to feel a little bit worse. And Lucian, pretty much similarly, she was a little bit slower than the other guys, and wasn't as strong as the top builds for Lucian. This is, again, mostly speculative, and it could be a little bit better than that. It could be that the changes are not as bad as I think, but again, since I have less experience on this build, I had to kind of go with the opinions of other people, so I just wanted it kind of being put here. Or what I understand from their opinions, at least. Safety-wise, it's still going to be a fairly safe build. It is ranged, and it does have a nice bit of mobility. It's not that hard to play as well, just a question of how good it is. The main gear costs are usually pretty high for this one, because you need good claws and good ED, and you also need pretty solid gear for PDR and for resistances, because you're not running Fade. Mind Blast is a build that I ran last season. I added links here as well. Again, I think it's a very strong decloner. It's a pretty solid Rathma runner and a very strong Lucian runner. I ran it with the mapping gear. I didn't even change gear to run declone and Lucian, just to demonstrate how strong I think the builds are in Lucian and declone. And while I didn't like Ace on the first try, it was the first time I ever tried it, and I immediately got it on the second, I think, from what I remember. So again, very, very strong builds. I think very versatile, and if you do actually buy gear for bossing with them, you'll do great. Difficulty medium, just because I think for some people managing the clones while also damaging and kiting can be a little challenging, but otherwise I found it was pretty okay. Minimum gear costs are medium. It just requires pretty solid claws and a lot of plus skills and FCR, but once you reach the breakpoint, everything else is kind of like flexible. Fist of Fire, I've seen pretty solid kills on Lucian on it. I've managed to do a Lucian kill myself. I haven't managed to do declone and Rathma kill yet. I've only had a couple attempts that I've done offline again, so not too much experience, but I've seen the kills on it. It looks like it's solid, not insane, but solid option for it for sure. And yeah, otherwise it gets a B for safety because it is a close range, not super tanky build. So again, a little bit of points deducted there. And the minimum gear costs seem to be high because of the facets, because of the competitive gear for Fire and for Fist of Fire in general. Cobra, I have not seen the declone kill on this as well. I've seen the Rathma kill. I've done tier 1 on this and not tier 2, and I've done the Lucian kill. Overall, that's my impression in terms of the difficulty on them. Safety-wise, very similar to Fist of Fire, just a melee martial arts build that is not the tankiest. It did feel harder to play. You do want to make sure you're getting the right charges on this build and that you're not kind of messing up your finishers. Min gear costs a little bit lower because you're using poison facets instead of fire. Otherwise, a lot of the gear is not too expensive. Lastly, the 2 trap builds, I have not seen them do Lucian at all, but I don't know if it's impossible. And for Rathma, I don't think that they're possible. The lack of Pierce is just too much for the Rathma fight. I suspect that the same is true for the Lucian fight, but just haven't seen it done. Again, I've seen some people say that they're good for it, but I just have never seen it. If these videos exist, I'd love to see them, to learn from them, so make sure to send them to me. But otherwise, fire traps, A for declone, just a very long and slow fight. You will have need for a lot of patience if you want to run this, but otherwise it is fine. Light traps is also kind of okay, generally speaking. You know, it's just a little bit worse than fire traps in my experience. medium in difficulty, hard in difficulty, mostly because it's very patience testing. The longer a fight is, the more mistakes you can make, and that's why they get some difficulty rating. Otherwise, gear costs are not too high. And finally, for the last class is the Amazon. Okay, and for the Amazon class, the recommended leveling path for me is the Power Strike into the Decoy Zone. Yes, I made it bigger. I only now remembered that people asked for me to make the visuals a little bit bigger, and I really forgot about it. So hopefully that didn't ruin the video for everyone, and you could see some of the things I was pointing at, and I guess I was reading it too, so there's not too much that you need to see there. But either way, Power Strike is a very strong build for normal. It can carry P8, very, very strong, very capable. Decoy Zone, extremely smooth and nice path. I've done like recently like a walkthrough, full walkthrough with Zone leveling all the way to Declone. So you can definitely use that as a guideline on how I personally approach leveling with Zone. I run the Act 4 Dark Mark for the amp. Speed is pretty good and safety is pretty solid as well. With the rune words you kind of want to know is lower, peace, and then later on loyalty and or harmony. For early farming, normally speaking, I recommend either Lightning Strike or Decoy Zone. I know that Magic Arrow can be pretty solid. I couldn't get it to be that good because I'm just bad with bow builds, which is something you'll hear me say quite a few times for this final class. And yeah, okay. So for Lightning Strike, Arcane Sanctuary and Cows were the areas I liked personally. Arcane Sanctuary seems to be the best one for it. It's a little bit slow. If you are building a Lightning Zone, you might as well kind of swap to it whenever you feel like you got some items and start building your Lightning, whether it's Lightning Fury or Lightning Strike. That you will be fine farming with this. Otherwise, you can just stay on Decoy Zone. It's a very versatile, very strong build, very safe build as well. The speed is a little lower because you don't have natural mobility as much as like the teleporters, but you can have a teleport stick and you should be okay. I like to farm keys with it, and act bosses, you can also do Chaos Sanctuary if you'd like. Act 4 Merc will help you deal with these pesky bosses, of course. Safety S, versatility A is very, very solid, and with a little bit of gear, it can also hop into early maps. For early bossing, we have quite a few options here, but a lot of them are pretty mediocre. For Ubers, Decoy Zone is an A. I know a lot of people rank it at S, but when I compared it to things like Druid Summoner, Holy Bolt, Necro Summoner, right, and Blizzard, it seemed to do slightly worse than the others, needing just a little bit more gear. I know a lot of people run this naked, and I'm very happy for them, but this just seems slightly worse than the other builds, so I couldn't have everything at S if this is definitely worse than the other ones, or at least for me it was definitely worse, even if only slightly worse and still a very solid build. Again, I have the demonstrations linked here. Declone, this is a capable Declone build. I personally ran it again here. It was made slightly better in season 12 because the danger level change for the decoys make them focus Diablo a little bit more. Again, it's a little bit of a hard fight to run for some people, so ranked it as C. Safety is B. You are very fragile, but you do have summons, and difficulty in medium. Gear requirements are medium. I assume that you'll need somewhere around 35 to level 37 decoys in order to run this fight efficiently or for it to feel good, but otherwise pretty solid. Explosive Arrow, this is the one I recommend to run the fight with. This is the one I managed to do the best with in the beta. Ubers are kind of mediocre. They're not the best with this. I prefer the decoys, but for the declone fight, definitely this felt better. Clearing the skeletons with it felt pretty good. You just want some Pierce to make sure you actually hit all the skeletons, and you want around level 35 to 37 Explosive Arrow, which is not too hard to get with like is a not Harmony but Melody rune word that can give up to +6 to bow and crossbow skills. So again, very doable, just slightly annoying. Safety again, a little low because you are fragile, but you are ranged. Difficulty medium, you just kind of kite with your bow. And gear requirements, medium, again, just a few rune words, basic ones, or a few basic gear pieces. Next is Plague Zone. In the Ubers, I didn't like her so much. She can do it, but it does take a lot of rejuves and a lot of patience. For Declone, she was a little bit better. Safety-wise, she's very safe, very ranged, and you can kind of kite around pretty easily with your Plague Javelin. This build was slightly nerfed because the damage over time builds like Bleed and Poison now no longer work. They don't finish the damage that they are supposed to do if you get out of the range of Declone, so a slight nerf to it. Otherwise, very easy fight to run. You just kind of stay very safe and throw your javelins when you can. It does require quite a few gear pieces, either with a Venom Rune Ward or with something that gives it a bunch of Pierce and Poison damage early on. So it does require a little bit of itemization in order to work. Magic Arrow, again, I've done this skill in tier 0. I'm pretty bad with this, but I think people who are good with bows will feel pretty okay with this. But for Ubers and Declone is capable and doable. I put it in hard difficulty, probably a skill issue on my end because I'm bad with bows. Jabazon, we tested a cheap Jabazon. It does require either crafting a few weapons, a few javelin weapons, or going with just like a javelin drop. We tried the Lysander flank that we found along the way, and we tried a few crafted weapons. It seems to be doing okay, but it does get C for Ubers and C for safety because it is a melee build with not a lot of survivability. So again, in the Ubers, it felt pretty scary, and I was very afraid of just being popped by Mephisto especially. So just keep that in mind. And Declone did kind of okay. Next is cheap mappers. We got Summons On, Jab, Light Strike, and Magic Arrow. Summons On did pretty well in terms of speed and safety. We ran Skillers, Even Bane, and an Enigma. Again, under that like 6 to 7 high runes, kind of a relative cheap mapper budget. So cheaper than getting an Infinity and Skillers for a different build. This build did pretty well. You pretty much summon your decoys, teleport to them, and telestomp with your Valkyries. Felt very safe, very strong. I ran it with the Act 4 Merc for Amp, and we also tried Active Defiance Merc for a little bit more survivability. We have the Jab setup. Jab is mostly a build you'll run if you are bossing with it. So again, this is an Earthwalker build, and all these usually end up around the C rank in terms of speed. In terms of safety, a B, because it's not very tanky. You kind of rely on your dodge and evade for a lot of damage mitigation. You don't have a lot of defense either, so again, not amazing, but you do normally buy some PDR gear, so I guess you do have that going for you. The immediate choices for purchases seems to just prioritize getting a good Stone Raven, which is your go-to weapon on this build. If you get an F1 and some jewels and a Zod rune to make it look pretty good, that's pretty much all you want to spend on, and it would cost you less than an Infinity Rune Ward, so that is okay in my book. The next one we go to is Lightning Strike. Seems to be doing pretty well once you get the Infinity and Thunderstroke. This is not the 40 IS Thunderstroke or anything like that. Just a normal Thunderstroke with like one shale is what we were running. So Skillers, Infinity, Thunderstroke seems to be doing okay. Again, could boss on the side if you wanted to boss with it, technically, and was just doing fine. Wasn't too fast. Again, is Earthwalker build at this stage, and running it with an Act 2 Defiance Merc means you don't have really access to Vigor. So that's just something to consider there. Magic Arrow, we ran it with an Act 2 Defensive Merc, running a Purity Rune Ward, so extremely cheap. There was nothing expensive about this build, so I just bought them an Enigma already. Magic LCs, Melody, Rune Ward, Enigma, just like I think we used in the beginning, like the Valkyrie Helm, and then I changed into a rare Circlet with just 2 to Amazon skills, not even FCR, just 2 to Amazon. We used a lot of blue gear, like +3 to Amazon, +3 to passive and magic amulet. Then we tried like a 2 skill crafted amulet. I think has a lot of room for overcapping your resistances, is pretty safe. You have room for PDR alongside the Enigma as well. Very, very flexible, doesn't require a lot, and works very, very well. It cleared maps extremely fast in the budget or cheap mappers category. So very, very strong build. Even with my skill issues, I could make it look pretty good. So just something to consider there. I think it's a very nice early mapper for sure. That is very, very cheap. And for endgame mappers, these are the mappers we chose: Fire Arrow, Cold Arrow, Magic Arrow, Crackle Shot Strafe, Explosive Arrow, Summons On, Light Strike, Light Fury, and Multi-Shot. I know there are more builds. Again, these are the ones I managed to get to. Fire Arrow, Safety B, and Speed A. You're running the Act 1 Vigor. Generally speaking, the safety comes mostly from you being, shooting from a bow and running from range. Since the range on this is not as huge as the other ones, again, safety still remains at B. And I considered making it higher, but it does feel like if you're going to get hit by the wrong thing, you will get popped. That was at least my experience. Speed, I give it an A. Managed to clear maps between 5 to 6 minutes, which for me was pretty solid. I think I was told that this build should be faster than that. I haven't seen videos of it, so that remains to be seen. Gear cost pretty high, a lot of fire facets, a lot of expensive stuff. Cold Arrow, we ran the crossbow version with the new bolts because I wanted to test it. I think the Cold Arrow bow might be slightly faster than it, but more expensive. So I like the crossbow version quite a lot. We ran Act 1 Vigor with it just to get like the extra mobility and the attack speed. For the safety, felt pretty okay. Sorry, you run the Act 1 Vigor with not with the crossbow version. The crossbow version we run with an Infinity Merc. And I tested all these builds with an Enigma, by the way, because I personally like the Act 2 Defiance with like an Enigma and kind of teleporting. I also tested an Act 3 Merc. I just know most people run this with a Faith Merc. So I think that's why I input like Act 1 Vigor here instead of the setup that I personally did. I should add probably the mercs that I run with, but I'm currently in view only, so I'll do that after I finish this video, I guess. Yeah, so safety wise, because I teleported for mobility to get the speed kind of to match up with the speed that they should have. That's why the safety is generally B. Cold Arrow did feel slightly faster, but not enough to change like a tier for it. Next one was Magic Arrow. Again, I ran this with an Enigma. Speed was A, still keeping up with these ones. I think Magic Arrow is the one that I could see going into the next tier to like S tier. If I was a little bit better with it, like I could see it happening, but I didn't quite manage to get it there. Safety wise, felt a little bit safer because you got more things to telestomp with, like the Valkyries to telestomp with, and you got the Purity rune ward. I still kept the Purity. This build was almost the same as this build. Pretty much, and it was still performing just as well over here in the tier 3s. So again, super powerful Magic Arrow, pretty recommended. Crackle Shot, that is the strafe version where you try to proc as many things from the Crackle Shot bow. I think it's a very cool build. Again, I tested it with an Enigma and teleporting around. Safety, very similar to these builds. Speed, again, we managed to get it to consistent sub 6 minute maps. I have managed to get a few sub 5 minute clears, but they were not consistent and very RNG reliant, as if you're not getting Light Fury at the right times. It feels like the clear is not as consistent. I wish they gave this 1 or 2 more percent, because I feel like that would really make it see a lot more play. But sadly, this is how things are, and this will be in an A tier for speed for me. In the gear cost for these general bow builds, you see it like it's mostly based on like if you need to buy facets. This one was extremely cheap. And this one relied on the ice rune ward, so it saves you quite a few rune wards on facets. For Explosive Arrow, the build that I was very excited for in the beginning of the season. Sadly, again, safety, very similar. I ran it with an Enigma to teleport around. Speed-wise, it was slightly slower than at these other bow builds and didn't quite keep up with them. The gear costs were just as high, so again, sadly not as worth to invest in. But if you do want to experience the new Explosive Arrow, the change to it is very cool. So definitely go for it. We got the Summon Zone with an Act 4 Dark Merc or an Act 1 Vigor Merc. I use the Dark Merc, I like them better. There's also an Act 2 Defiance Merc option that I also like more than the Vigor Merc. What can I say? I'm a true hater. But safety-wise, extremely safe. Very, very good. Speed-wise, we managed to get it to 6 to 7 minutes clear on the Summon Zone. Very consistent, and also leaves you time for looting, which is a very nice quality of life. Gear costs are extremely low. Don't really go up with the endgame gear that much. So again, super nice option for endgame mapping. Lightning Strike was a pretty solid build. From all the ground walkers, it seems to be one of the faster ones because I guess it does have the extra little bit of AoE with the Lightning Strike. We run it with an Act 1 Vigor just to give it some extra movement. Safety-wise, it's a melee build with not the best health pool or leech, so I put it in B. And for speed, it gets a B as well. Managed to do consistent sub 7 minute maps, which is pretty solid. The gear is not super expensive, so it gets a medium for the gear prices. Lightning Fury is a build that I was gassed on before the beta. I was told that it's very strong in tier 3s. And I know it's very good in group scenarios. I've ran this I haven't run this personally. I've ran with a group that had several Light Fury in season 10, and they weren't really carrying the team once they get a lot of support from the team. But I think by themselves, they're not that impressive. I tried with and without an Enigma to make this build go faster. It just seemed to not have as good of a clear. And I know that it shines more in a more dense area, but it seems even in more dense areas, it left a lot of stragglers, a lot of things didn't really die, and either required me to spend more time killing them, or alternatively, just spent a lot of time not killing a lot of things. Overall, got a C for speed for me and a B for safety, despite the very high gear costs. So not my personal recommendation for mappers, but I guess it is what it is. Lastly, there's the good old multi-shot. Again, while this was nerfed on damage, if you get a good enough crafted bow, you'll be fine. It doesn't require that very good crafted bow, though, to do as well as it used to. On the other hand, it did get the buff to pierce, so the clear should be more consistent once you get that huge bow. I still haven't seen that like sub 5-minute multi-shot tier 3 solo runs being consistent. I haven't seen it ever. I think it might be possible if you use an Enigma instead. I just didn't have like a good enough crafted bow during the beta. We tried crafting a little bit and didn't manage to hit anything, so I couldn't really go into that deep, but maybe one day I'll be able to test this on ladder. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the bow builds, so of course it's not on my highest priority, but it's a solid build, especially for people who don't want to interact with the screen too much and just gonna shoot from afar and loot afterwards. That would definitely be a build for you. Lastly, we have tier 2 bossing, and let me go like this, just so we don't spoil the ending. We got Plague and Jabzon. So Plague is amazing for declone, very, very solid. What's it called? Andariel's Visage got buffed for this build because they got 10, up to 10 more Poison Pierce. So that's going to be amazing for Plague Javelin, getting 10 extra Pierce. Was already one of the better declone killers at S tier now, I think, for early declone kills. In Rathma, it's still going to be a little bit of a struggle because the fight is pretty slow. So there's a lot of room for making mistakes. I know a lot of people would swear that this is a very good Rathma farmer. So again, maybe that is what it is. But I did do kills with both of these last season, so I'm just going based on my experience. Lucian, a little bit slow in this build. Again, you won't necessarily die. It's just very, very slow. So there is like some room for making mistakes or maybe being forced out of the fight. So that's just something to remember. Safety-wise, pretty safe. Ranged build, had a lot of room for PDR or for overcap for resistances, and now has even more pierce, so pretty solid overall. Difficulty easy, not hard to maneuver. Again, pretty much you kite and you throw your javelins based on the cooldown. And the gear costs are pretty low. Plague doesn't use very contested gear, and on top of it uses things like Bramble Rune Ward, or just things that other people don't use that much, and Poison Facets, which are always cheap. Lastly, we have Jabzon. This is the Jabzon in declone. While she is slightly worse than the Plague Javelin because she is a melee class with a small health pool, you have in the Rathma fight, she is pretty strong, and in the Lucian fight, she's very strong. We had very good runs with both Rathma and Lucian. Did it on the first try, and I did a few more runs afterwards. And in my opinion, it's a very nice bosser for the Amazon class. Again, not super popular, but very strong in my opinion. Safety wise, A for Plague is ranged even with the small life pool. Jab a little bit lower, but still fairly fine. Difficulty easy for both. Medium gear cost because you do need that good Stone Raven and the extra gear to complete all of your resistance and PDR needs. And I have the links here for all of my demonstrations for both of them from season 11. Lastly, there are more bosser options for Zon in the bow skill tree, but I haven't managed to get tier 2 kills with any of them. Yes, any of them. Skill issue of them yet, as they are not added to the list at the moment. Skill issue, I can't use bows. So when I say I can't use bows, I really struggle to be consistent with my bow usage, which is why I couldn't get any kills with them. I didn't want to write them down. It's not because you can't get kills with Cold Arrow or Immolation Arrow or with maybe even Explosive Arrow now, and with Magic Arrow. There are kills recorded. I didn't have like anything that I could say about them right now, and I feel like if I can't even make them work, any of them work in tier 2s, I should maybe leave them off my tier list for now, as long as I remind people that it's not because they are bad, it's because I am bad. So we all have our flaws. This is personally mine. I didn't play Zon for like the last 20 years, almost at all. In LD, I almost never played her. So just that sometimes, we're just not perfect, and that is the end of the tier list, right? That is the end. So about 2.5 hours, slightly over, I know. I did my best to kind of go over all of this. It's been a very long day of recording. And now just a few words at the end. I wanted to give like 1 or 2 options for each class that I personally would pick as mappers or things that I find very fun or exciting to do in season 12. And then I'll send you your way and bless you and hope that everybody will have a happy season 12. So for the Druid, in terms of budget mappers, I think Wind Druid is very, very strong, very solid for the Druid class. In terms of mapping builds, I think for people who don't mind AFK builds, who don't want to be too active, maybe you have a kid who's going to interrupt you while you're playing, I think the Vines Summoner might be an interesting choice. For sure, I'm interested in exploring this too. This season seems very solid. Once we have the link here, more people can try it. Otherwise, Fire Druid is still an insane late game mapper, despite the nerfs. Don't worry. In terms of bossing, again, Maul is still very good. Fireclaw is still very good. Fewer and Rabies, a lot of good options, right? You'll be fine. Oh, I think actually my music actually ran out of the playlist. That's how long this recording was. For the Sorceress, I really recommend checking out Frozen Orb. This is a build that I guess up every season, but people hardly play it. If you don't want to try Frozen Orb, I think Combustion and Frozen Orb both are good. And if you want an off-meta build, the Fire Enchant Sorc with the Demon Machine is very, very strong. I probably won't have time to play it this season, so I hope other people will enjoy it. For bossing, I don't recommend bossing with Sorc if you're new to bossing. Generally, it's not easy. For Paladin, from all the builds, in terms of the cheap mappers, I think Sanctuary Sacrifice is one of the best builds for the cheap mappers category. Very, very solid, very easy to build, and very natural, smooth transition into the late game. From the general mappers here, Lightning Sacrifice seems to have enjoyed the buffs the most this season, and it looks like a very strong one. In the past, Cold and Fire were always a little bit better, so I'm kind of interested to see more people bring out Sacrifice Lightning into the fold, so that is my recommendation here. For Barb, personally, the build that I was most excited to play already from last season was Throw. I think Throw Barb is incredibly strong and fun. Maybe not necessarily as a budget mapper, but as a late game mapper. And you'll see once I post the demonstration, he is very capable, and I will, of course, demonstrate it from the beta. So it's with unslammed weapons, so you can get a lot better than that on the live version and make it look even more crazy. So look forward to that. In the Necro category, there are so many different options that you could go with. Personally, I'm a big fan of Dark Pact, and I've played it in the past and super enjoyed it. And all of his mappers, as you can see, are super strong. I think that personally I would play Corpse Explosion because just Corpse Explosion is an awesome build, and it's lost its line of sight option in Season 11. Who knows if it will lose something again in the future. So I would play it before it gets nerfed. Otherwise, if you like the AFK builds, Fire Golem is great. Dark Pact if you like pressing a ton of buttons, and if you want to be the fastest like no one ever was, Poison Nova or Poison Strike. In the Assassin endgame mappers, personally I want people to play things like Mind Blast and Death Sentry, but I know for most people they want the more streamlined builds, so things like Fist of Fire I heavily recommend. Also Kick is a nice like off meta mapper for sure. And for Amazon, lastly, in terms of endgame mappers, personally, I think Magic Arrow has a lot to be explored. And as somebody who expected Summons On to be a lot worse than it actually was, even though it is slower than these mappers, I think definitely Summons On can be a fun way to map for people even though it's a summon build, it's a lot more active than summon builds normally are. So, because you also strafe, you also kind of teleport and work your summons while you do. It has like nice kind of vibe to it, so I kind of like this build. That's like kind of the builds that I can recommend. I wish I could recommend Crackle Shot and Explosive Arrow, but they're much less consistent than I wanted them to be, even if I was very excited to play Crackle Shot and Explosive Arrow initially. So these are kind of like my personal lineup for mappers or endgame mappers that I would kind of recommend you try in Season 12. Again, this doesn't mean they're necessarily better or the best, just the ones that I personally would play if I had the infinite time and options to play. With that said, that kind of concludes my tier list. I will do my best to, within the next 24 hours, to already release or even the next 12 hours to already release 7 guides, one for each class, just so we start having guides on the channel. I'm doing my best to get as many of them out as fast as possible, and hopefully everybody can enjoy them and learn from them and use them to whatever benefit that they want. But with that said, this is the end of the tier list video. Extremely long, extremely tiring to record, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my rest. I'm gonna rest all the way till tomorrow. We're not streaming on the 27th, and we'll be back for launch, so make sure to join us for a big grind on launch. We're gonna go with Summon Druid for a season start, and make sure to catch us there if you wanna be part of the journey all the way to the tier 2s and to the extra farming in the early season. With that said, thank you so much for watching today's long and tiring video. I hope you enjoyed it or learned something from it. And if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. Helps a lot, and I really appreciate it. With that said, thank you so much. Have a good whatever you're having. Until the next time, bye bye bye.